to another episode of the Retro Football Show. I'm Kirk Buchner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com, the United States Athletic Hall of Fame, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I should have said the U.S. Hall of Fame for last, because I want you all to, after you watch this, to go vote. www.notInHallOfFame.com/USA, and you can help decide who's going to be part of the first ever United States Athletic Hall of Fame class. Because, hey, someone had to come up with it, so myself and my partner Evan Nolan did. Because why not? There you go. With me, as always, is Paul Lawrence. If he doesn't know the answer to a Hall of Fame related question, you asked a stupid question. How you doing, Paul?
Good. And if I don't know the answer, our next guest you're going to introduce probably also knows it. But thanks for having me, Kurt. And these have been a lot of fun going through these Super Bowls, at least for us, an era in the 70s, especially that we fondly remember. And if our viewers haven't figured out by now, maybe they have, I'm a huge Cowboys fan, and for today's game, we're getting a little more detail in a moment, but I want to be full disclosure here, Kurt and Ron. This is the first Super Bowl I ever watched. As a kid, my dad was a football fan, so I'm sure we watched other games in the regular season, but my memory and my fandom as both an NFL and a Cowboys fan started with this game. So a little personal note there. I'll try to keep my enthusiasm and my excitement kind of deal, but that's my strong personal connection to this specific game. It all started for me back in January of 1978.
Well, I have no recollection of this game initially, but our guest today, we can't have a better guest for this. It's our good friend Ron Katz, former, and I think should be future Broncos fan of the year.
Oh, no.
No?
Once was enough.
Once was enough?
Oh, no, you're not allowed to be, but I know some of my contemporaries were actually applying for it again, and I could never take that honor away from anyone else. I mean, there's so many great fans out there.
Well, Ron's modest about almost everything, but I'm not going to let you be modest on this, because Ron's been very, very active, and I want to say, I think on behalf of Paul, on behalf of really a lot of people, your tireless work to help get Randy Gradishar into the Pro Football Hall of Fame is something that we're all in awe of. We're all very impressed with. I know you said it takes but let's be blunt. And there's the saying, it takes a village. You're the mayor. You're the founder of the village. You are the chief of police of the village. You run the fire department. You take care of the hospital, the sanitation, everything. We are. Yes. So, we're recording this late August, so this will probably not go up for a couple months till after. So this is why this is very fresh in our minds, and we just want to say great work and well earned.
Well, thank you. And it's a big deal for Randy and his family, 35 years waiting. And as you know, and Paul and you and Vinny and Jack and the whole crew have advocated for these great seniors players who are in the backlog. And some of them are going in posthumously or in debilitated health where they can't enjoy it with their families. So that was one of my missions. And the other thing is too, Randy obviously is an all-time great player. You want to make sure all-time greats continually get in the Hall of Fame to maintain that legacy.
Yeah.
But that was quite the Super Bowl. And I've just Randy story.
And this is a great avenue because he's a big player in this game, and we're going to highlight in a lot of ways. I mean, he wasn't. Yeah, we'll get to that. We won't.
Got to get him there.
You know what happened.
Yep.
You know what happened. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess we're going to look in greater detail. Obviously, we're talking about Super Bowl 12 and January 16th, 1977, and finally we're at the Superdome. So we've got a couple firsts here. It's the first time we're in a dome. First time we're prime time in Eastern Standard. And the first time that we've got a rematch of a regular season game. Dallas defeated Denver in the last game at the end of the season. And so Dallas is as the established team, but Denver took a hard road to get here. 14 years before they ever had a winning season. And just to get to a winning record, and the man who led them this year is somebody who lost his starting job in Dallas. And someone who we've seen before. Yes.
There he is.
Yep. Craig Morton. Morton is, I don't know if I want to say the best. He's not the best quarterback, maybe never to be selected to a Pro Bowl, but he might be in that conversation in some capacity. And this was one of Morton's great years that he did have. named the comeback player of the year. But the offenses we're gonna get to, we're not exactly talking about. I had to look up a lot of these people because I did not know a lot of these names at all. Oh. And it's a very unique way too. But really what got them here is the defense. Gradishar, as we talked about, Tom Jackson, Lyle Alzado, Lewis Wright. They had to get here. They had to defeat Pittsburgh, and we know how good Pittsburgh was. 9 Hall of Famers, I believe, on that team, 34-21, and then defeat Oakland, who we just
Haven Moses, 74 yards to the house, was like the explanation point for the Broncos that year, where it basically said to them, you belong. Yes, this 12-2 thing is no facade. You're going to the Super Bowl.
You're beating 2 loaded teams, 2 loaded proven teams to get here. I didn't check. I should have. Were Denver, despite the record, I know that the line here was Dallas by 6, but were they not favored in the games against Pittsburgh and Oakland? Do you know, either of you?
I can't remember, but keep in mind, the game was in Denver.
Right, but
and Denver won the division. But the Raiders, of course, were defending Super Bowl champions, I believe. So,
and of course, the Steelers were still at their prime. So those are 2 very, even though they're at home, those were 2 very impressive wins by the Broncos to get in this Super Bowl, because they took on 2 of the other big heavyweights in dynasties in the mid 70s, and we've already highlighted both of them in previous shows. So they're no fluke. They were by no means. They were the best team in that conference, and they proved it.
Yeah, and to add, the previous year, of course, the Raiders won the Super Bowl, but the reason they got to the Super Bowl is the Steelers. That was when Joe Turkey Jones dropped Bradshaw on his head, and with rookie quarterback handing the ball off to Blyer and Harris, and they had momentum going, except for the plane that almost went into Memorial Stadium during the game in Baltimore that year. But when they got to Oakland, they were down to like a special teams running back, and they were no match for the Raiders at the Coliseum. So, I mean, it was a team that started 1-4 and ran the table. So, I mean, those are like 2 powerhouse teams, winners of the last 3 Super Bowls going into that.
I had to get my other co-host because she was having a fight with the other dog. Winnie's joining us, so just something a lot easier to bring.
Hi, Winnie.
Yes. Sometimes Winnie does does props during these games. Despite the fact I have a little mini dash, and I do want to sort of like put out that I am heterosexual and have been married for a long time. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when I take this one to the bar, sometimes people are asking me that. Might be why I got hit on the other day that I wasn't expecting, which is still flattering. But I digress. I think also too. I don't know who it was who put it out there. I think it might have been our friend Jack. To get here, I think they had to beat a combined 17 Hall of Famers.
Yep.
Those 2 games. Mm-hmm. We're off by number. It's not by much. Denver was legit. Dallas, they're going in with their doomsday defense and their new big shiny toy, Tony Dorsett. Yes. And that's our first look at that. The rookie who won the Heisman rushed for over 1,000 yards despite not starting all the games. He didn't win the starting job until a few games in. And relatively speaking, Dallas got here easy. Beat Chicago 37-7, beat Minnesota 23-6. Defense forced a combined 11 turnovers in those 2 games. One of the things that Paul and I like doing, we love looking at how production changes. So we're going to be commenting on a lot of that. And we always love it when we've got good commentators. And we do. CBS has got it with Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire. And I wrote down here, and this is where I'm going to go off to you, Ron, because I got here that Dallas won the toss, but we didn't see it. But I know it's presented by Red Grange, but there's a story that I didn't know. So please.
They did that 30 minutes before the game. Okay. And I'm not sure exactly why, but they just wanted to make sure there wasn't a malfunction or something like that. And then they had them come out, Grange and the referees, the captains, or whatever the deal was back then. They had them come out 3 minutes before the game for the fans. And then they flipped the coin, and I don't know, whatever of those heads or tails, they just said, oh, it's heads and Dallas wins the toss kind of thing, like very, very unusual situation. But again, this was the first primetime Super Bowl. And if you remember 3 years before, they were trying to do that. And that's why the NFL has that rule that if you get a new stadium, you got to wait till the second year before you host the Super Bowl, because they had to play in Tulane Stadium, which was not ideal conditions 3 years before. So once they got their nice, shiny stadium and it was broken in good, they wanted to go all out for prime time.
Oh, yeah.
And hey, we got to make the coin toss look good. Yeah. Heads, tails, whatever. Red range, yes.
We didn't get to see that. Sometimes if we can find the full broadcast, because I personally like ripping on the commercials, because it's just a great way to sort of see society in a way. Or just how beer commercials have evolved or devolved or evolved. I don't know. They're different now. But I guess we'll get to the game. Denver's Jim Turner kicks off, a real veteran, 14th of his 16 years. Paul, you and I saw him before in Super Bowl III. Here's something I found interesting that I didn't know. In 1969, the year after the Super Bowl, somehow the United Press voted him second in AFL MVP voting. How the hell does that happen?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Then just for fun, I decided I'd look up to see if Justin Tucker ever got an MVP vote. Nope. For anything.
Yeah, that's what we think of today.
Different then. It was different then.
It was.
I can't wait till when we get to Mark Mosley. And I'm going to do a deep dive and try to figure out that MVP.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But whatever. Anyway, kickoff. Butch Johnson returns to the 28, second year player, backup wide receiver, but he had good return game, 959 return yards total this year. Played until 1985. Last two with your team, the Broncos.
Yep.
So pretty good player, 6,000 all-purpose yards, 28 touchdowns. Never really a starter, but a pretty good player overall.
So, Ron, what's the most famous thing that Butch Johnson, besides this catch we'll get to later, other than that, what's the most famous thing he's known for in his career? You know?
Well, I remember specific to this game, three plays.
Right, but outside this game is his career. What else is he known for?
Playing for the Broncos?
No, he created, look it up on your own time, the Quake.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Celebration. Folks, you can look up that on your own.
Quake.
Quake.
I'll have to
I remember.
You won't see it in this game.
Gadget play.
Later.
I remember a gadget play and a punt return that were a little.
Yeah.
And Denver gets it. It's a different.
Yeah, we're going to cover that.
Is the Quake a dance?
Yeah.
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 I'm sure it's no Icky Shuffle.
No, it was way before all of that, but it was one of the first kind of dance type TD celebrations that kind of got popular. But anyways, that comes later. I mean, in the 80s. But at any rate.
Well, we're going to meet the Dallas offense. No, they didn't do the cool pictures like they did the last one, where we saw them all like big circles and everything. But nothing. We don't actually. They didn't do a graphic either. But that's all right. Quarterback Roger Staubach, running back Tony Dorsett, fullback Robert Newhouse. The wide receivers are Drew Pearson and Butch Johnson. Tight end Billy Joe Dupree, and our O-line left tackle Ralph Neely, left guard Herbert Scott, center John Fitzgerald, right guard Tom Rafferty, and right tackle Pat Donovan. And the Denver defense, left defensive end, Barney Chavis. As a Canadian, I always want to say Chavis. Because we make everything French.
Yes.
Nose tackle Reuben Carter, right defensive end Lyle Alzado. Left up.
Second in Defensive Player of the Year. Almost won it over Harvey Martin. But Gradishar prevented that.
Well, we'll get to an MVP later that I'm going to ask the two of you to explain because I don't get it. Our linebackers on the outside left, Bob Swanson. Inside left, Joe Rizzo. Right inside, Randy Gradishar. Right, yes. On the right, also Tom Jackson. Our corners are Lewis Wright and Steve Foley. Strong safety, Bill Thompson. Free safety, Bernard Jackson. First down, we've got a botched reverse when Butch can't hang on to the ball. Bobbles it, it's a 9-yard loss. Second 19, it's a first look at Tony Dorsett. Tackled for no gain by
Randy Gradishar. Just look where 53 is and you'll know where the play is.
Mm-hmm. Third 19, Staubach gets 8 yards back on a bootleg to Preston Pearson. Pearson, we've seen a lot of Preston I think
Yeah,
when
the
we
games
started,
we covered, he's
yeah.
popped up because, of course, he played for the Steelers in their early dynasty, and then was sort of let loose. And then a year later, the game we already covered, the Super Bowl then, he showed up on this side and is a key part of the defense, the offense of the Cowboys. And that would become critical as we get to the later in the game. Circumstances merited him, and his role would kind of be a bit higher. But a really unique a receiving threat out of the backfield on third down, especially, was sort of his specialty per se. So
I gotta admit, when we started doing this, I did not think we'd be talking more Preston than Drew.
yes, we'll get back to that topic later too. Yes.
Yeah. And there's also 44 out of the backfield as well, who's very unsung.
One thing that we notice here, like you talked about the shiny new toy of the Superdome, we've got an overhead camera. So
Yes.
and we love this because we're watching production evolve, and these are some great shots here from overhead, which you kind of take for granted now, but back then, as we're watching it get better year by year, it's pretty cool to see. I don't know if that's the first time they ever tried a shot like this.
Could be.
Yeah, it was really difficult to do that in outdoor stadiums the way that they were constructed, as the cookie cutter ones or the old ones. And the new stadiums like this were meant for concerts and big productions, flashy stuff. It's New Orleans, right?
Yeah. I read somewhere, I don't know if that's true or not, that the XFL changed a whole lot of the camera work when they sort of for everything. There's a lot, like the original XFL, not the other one. You know, as much as that league wasn't necessarily great to watch, it did change a lot of things. Dallas is forced to punt. We got Danny White with the honors. I did not know this until much later on, that he was a punter first. I mean, like when I grew up starting to watch football, that was the Cowboys quarterback at that point. And then I just heard of the legend of Roger Staubach. I did not know that it took him 4 years as the heir apparent, and then really 6, because he went to the World League first, where he could play. So I had no idea. All right, so he gets off a great punt, but Hollywood Henderson, hits Rick Upchurch before he just got too excited. Dallas is correctly penalized. Denver's got 1st and 10 on good field position to start on their own 47. Let's meet the offense. Quarterback Craig Morton, running back Otis Armstrong, fullback John Keyworth, wide receiver Jack Dolbin, wide receiver Haven Moses, tight end Riley Odoms, and the line Andy Marr, left tackle, Tom Glassick at left guard, center Mike Montier, I don't know. His name didn't come up. The Frenchman in me wants to say Montier, so we're going to do that. Right guard Paul Howard, right tackle Claude Miner, and we got this defense. Too Tall Jones, left defensive end, left defensive tackle, my favorite name of all of sports, Jethro Pugh, right defensive tackle. I've got to say that 3 times.
Yep.
Right defensive tackle, Randy White, right defensive end, Harvey Martin, our linebackers, Thomas Henderson on the left, Bob Brunig middle, Dede Lewis on the right. I think it's our first time looking at Dede. Cornerbacks, Benny Barnes and Aaron Kyle. And our safeties, Strong, Charlie Waters, and Cliff Harris, free safety. I wrote down, and I want your take on this, Ron, really bad. This offense is fascinating because I had to look up a lot of these guys. This year, no rusher over 500 yards.
Yeah. I can explain. Oh, if you look back to 74, Otis Armstrong, I think, led the league in rushing. Just like he could have been someone we're talking about for Hall of Fame from this team, but he tore up his knee, and he was never quite the same player despite his best efforts. So it was running back by committee.
I've always heard that term, and I guess in my era, it's always sort of like been running back by committee. It might be 2 or 3 guys. This is a lot more than that.
This is a big committee, but that was
very big committee. I've never seen a committee like this. Same with the receivers.
But Red Miller and his staff did it. Yeah, but Red Miller and his staff got very smart about it, and they tried getting people in the best positions. But if you look at receiver, I mean, it's Haven Moses was that guy. Yeah. Haven Moses was the star guy. And I mean, he's the one who helped him, and Morton broke open that championship game with a 74-yard touchdown.
And that's so true. When you look at it from the lens, because you can't not look at the lens of the era that you're living in. if I were to say to somebody, okay, your leading yard from scrimmage person has only 617, which is Armstrong, and they're in the Super Bowl, you're looking at me with two heads. Like, I got two heads. Like, you're not believing this. But
yeah,
as I look deeper, so still overall 10th in overall offense in points, 17th in yards. That's yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just made a comment about Jim Turner being in the MVP voting. Well, you just answered your question there, because they were a team that used the defense. I think they gave up 10.2 points a game. And if you look at that Orange Crush, it was well beyond that year, the next year, where they were allowing like 12 points a game. That was a defensive era. And so if you could do that, run the ball, get the ball downfield, get the field goals. Jim Turner, one of those head-on kickers, one of the last of those. He just passed away, sadly. Rest in peace. But that was the formula for success for them. Yeah. And I'll just say about Dallas, hats off to Gil Brandt. I mean, to get Dorsett, and then you mentioned Randy White, another like high draft pick that I don't know if they traded or what they did to get him.
So I was going to save that for later, but why don't we bring that in now? So they fleeced the Seattle Seahawks essentially. To be able to give up a bunch of second rounders the Cowboys had compiled, and they fleeced the Seahawks in that draft, because as our viewers and Kurt will remember, when the Cowboys lost to the Steelers in Super Bowl X, their running game was a deficiency, and we think we talked about it at that game or after that we talked about that. The Cowboys realized that was a weakness they needed to get addressed. They didn't do it in 76, but they did it with the 77 draft. And yeah, he was a key, and they're still doing a little bit by committee. We've mentioned a couple other guys, but yeah, he was emerging in this game and this season. He slowly started to emerge as a starter because Landry just wouldn't throw a rookie in at that kind of key position. Now, here's the quiz for the day, folks. The Cowboys trade Craig Morton away for 2 draft picks. Who did they get in return? And I'll hint, they're both playing in this game, but one of them is playing for the other team that they were drafted in the draft when they were drafted them.
They traded him to the Giants, so not that matters.
And what did they get for that in return? Yeah. Anybody know?
2 picks, right?
2 picks. First round pick they got was Randy White.
Okay, there you go.
The second pick that they got didn't quite work out. They wanted me part of their running back and probably got squeezed out. He was drafted in 1976, second round. Dorsett squeezed him off the roster. Anybody happen to know who that is?
Yeah.
Leno?
I've got a note down here later but I don't remember which one. Is there somebody?
It's Jim Jensen.
Oh, Jensen. Yes.
Played 1 year with the Cowboys. Yeah. He lost his roster essentially because of Dorsett, and got picked up by the Broncos. And you will see him in this game. So interesting historical connections of players that are going to see. And two of these guys are going to see a lot of each other in this game.
Yeah, Paul, the next thing you're going to tell me is that somehow Dan Reeves his lineage will somehow end up in Denver within a few years. But I just couldn't believe it. And Butch Johnson. And fill in the blank.
Yeah. Gotta love it. Denver's first carry goes to Keyworth. They mention how and Henderson redeems himself with a beautiful tackle for loss, 5 yards. Summerall mentions how Keyworth is a jazz singer. I looked up his music. He fancies himself a singer. He fancies himself wrong. It's not good. Better than I could do, but I never put out an album.
But better than Bradshaw?
I don't know. I'll put it this way. I'm planning to do another show this fall, which is called "Why Did They Sing?"
Oh, good.
When athletes try to sing.
Oh.
And this will be on that. Is it better than It's on par. I did find where Terry Bradshaw is singing on a country show.
Yeah, bad.
On a few shows, but anyway. 2nd and 15, Keyworth gets 3 of those yards back. So 3rd and 12, Morton needs a bigger play. So who is he going to go to? Haven Moses, just like we talked about. That's your best guy.
Well,
well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. Never mind. Go ahead.
Did I get? No,
I'm thinking the next drive where it's intended for Moses, but it.
Well, no. This was a rare completion. I can understand why there's so few of them here. Sorry, I had to do that. I apologize. Denver 1st and 10 on the Dallas 34. We go to Armstrong, carries it for 1. I noticed here that the coverage from the NFL, it's a little bit choppy, but we're also in the bounce and jiggle period that Paul and I were sort of talking about. I've been watching a lot of Pluto TV lately, just as I'm working. I put shows on that I'm familiar with in the background when I don't want to pay attention. So it's been a lot of Love Boat, Three's Company, just stupid shows that are mindless. And they called that the bounce and jiggle era, when Charlie's Angels, stuff like that. And we're getting our first cheerleader shot. And then I realized that was actually our third cheerleader shot. And then I thought about this because as Paul and I have been doing this, and that's the first thing, because we were messaging each other. It's like, because you messaged me, like, did you notice that there's a lot more cheerleader shots? Because we didn't see virtually any. The only one I remember was, I don't remember because they weren't focusing on it, but they were focusing on this so much. And
yeah, I mean, we keep watching these games, and we notice a lot of things. You just sort of see something that's a bit different here. And of course, the Cowboys with Tex Schramm sort of revigorated the whole idea of the cheerleaders in the early 70s. And of course, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders became a national phenomenon. Other teams picked that up, but not all of them did. So I also think we have an era in the mid 70s in TV coverage. And then we have two teams with, let's be honest, in the league with sexy cheerleaders, and all of a sudden, boom, we're just seeing a lot more of it, a lot more sideline photographs and whatnot throughout the whole game, it seemed like.
Yes, but there's one key element.
What's
what
that?
time was that game?
Yeah.
It was in prime time. So the FTC folks aren't exactly, you're not going to get someone in the heartland saying, oh my God, the indecency of the cheerleaders running around in their thongs or whatever they're doing, and so that they felt they could get away with it. And also they're trying to get ratings. It wasn't sweeps month because it was January, but that might have been.
You also knew your demographic, essentially. It's funny. I'm in a fantasy football league that is 1/3 women.
Yeah, it's a lot different now, but you're right.
Not
Back then, your average football fan was a middle-aged beer drinking. Well, the commercial shows all that. Yeah, so that's what you're getting. Yeah, all these things kind of, and it's just we just started noticing it because you didn't see that earlier Super Bowls at all.
Yeah, so it's very different. It's very, very unique. But you're right. I didn't even think of that. That actually makes perfect sense. The camera cuts to Turner, and Summerall says, "Well, they're not in his range yet. It would have been 51 yards, and again, something so different than we would think of today." Brookshire is actually having a great laugh at that they could even imply that they would even try a 51-yarder. 2nd and 9, it's a fake handoff. Morton drops back, and Too Tall deflects his elbow, with the passing motion. 3rd down, we got a Dallas blitz, and Morton is sacked by Randy White. It's an 11-yard loss. I'm mentioning here, too, because this is actually the only sack that Randy White would have, and I couldn't find that he got credited with a tackle, which will be sort of important later on. I think you might know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Do you remember the Sports Illustrated cover, though? That's the one. I think it was White and Martin, or maybe White and Too Tall, basically making a sandwich of Morton. Okay. And it might have been. I think it caused the interception, actually, the first or second interception. But it was kind of an iconic play that they replayed in slow motion over and over. People in Denver was like, "Come on, just stop."
As a Saints fan, I can't watch a certain Vikings game, but that's another story. Well, they definitely have to punt now, and the Broncos punter is Bucky Diltz. Only played 3 years. This was year number 2. But before the punt, we've got a cheerleader shot again. And I've decided now I'm going to count them throughout the game. at this point.
And for our viewers, it took me 3 quarters to figure out that was going on, but apparently Kirk picked it up and made note of it for the entire game.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about me, but I
think if.
Go ahead.
No, just think if there were prop bets back then. How many times will Cowboys cheerleader? What's the over/under on Broncos cheerleaders, Cowboys combined, first quarter, first half? Like you can you imagine?
Yeah.
The parlays.
And not only that, we all know that Kirk would have been putting money on that.
Yes.
I would have.
The Buchner verse.
Paul's not wrong. I probably would have. Punt's a great one. Tony Hill, he looks like he mucked it on his own too. Probably never should have fielded it. In live action, I thought Denver had it.
We did.
I think everybody did. The crowd sure did. The commentators did. But Dallas did recover. Charlie Waters is the one who got it. That could have gone so much a different way.
And just think that's the second play, with that cute little end around and gadget play early, and then there's another one we'll get to with the interception that wasn't. But I mean, just think of how that could have changed the game. And for a team like Denver, that's just starting to feel its oats and do we belong? And yes, we do. You just give them that kind of enthusiasm. It might have changed the complexion. I mean, I'm not saying we should have won the game, Paul, but I'm just saying we've seen games turn like that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Kurt and I talk about momentum. We talk about key plays. We talk about how the flow. This game is there's all of that going on, and
especially this quarter.
Our viewers who aren't familiar, the theme for the next little while here is watch the bouncing ball.
They
you're going to see it bouncing from both sides.
Yeah. They even make reference. Brookshire later on will say, I mean, when you have an oblong ball, strange things will happen.
Yeah, and we see a lot of that.
And those NFL films, Sables would use that quote.
So true.
Yep.
On 1st and 10 on their own one, Landry, I don't know how I slept on this all this time. Maybe because I just wasn't as much into history as I became until I was in my early 30s with that. Because I guess I just had, and I've talked about this with Paul, you just look at Tom Landry and you just think he's the most conservative man on the planet. And his football mind is not. We got a ballsy play right here. And just the trust here. As we got Staubach dropping back a bit, gets Dorsett in the flat. That could have easily gone so bad, but he gains 15 yards out of it. Denver was not expecting it. Neither was I. Neither was a lot of people. So Dallas got 1st and 10 on their own 16. They give back to Tony, rushes for 3, gets it again, and then we have another thing that looks like this could have gone Denver's way. We've got a fumble, and again, the first gut reaction when you're looking at this live, Denver's got this. But he doesn't. That's not the case. It's amazing how this could have gone the other way, especially when we didn't have instant replay. And if they would have called it differently, there you go.
Cowboys first 2 possessions, 3 fumble recoveries. So the ball is bouncing.
and give Tom Landry and his staff credit, realizing how formidable the Broncos defense was. And having various gadget plays and not being afraid to use them even in risky situations and playing to win.
Yep, exactly. You're right, Ron.
Brookshire accurately says that the Cowboys are dodging bullets here. And then I wrote down, a team this good just does not need to be also lucky too. And right now their luck plays a big part of this. On shotgun, and we're going to see this pattern a lot. The pocket collapses, and Reuben Carter gets his first sack, for Denver. And Dallas has got a punt from their own 16. This one is returned by John Schultz, one of the 2 returners there. This one's only 4 yards. Overall, he had a limited career, just 3 seasons, 279 all-purpose yards. Holding penalty pushed them back, so Denver's starting 1st and 10 on their own 36. They show Lyle Alzado, and Summerall mentions, or Brookshire, doesn't matter which, how he can do a 500-pound bench press easily. I wonder how he could. Alzado is one thing I did. I think Paul knows this, Ron. Maybe you don't. I had a show. I'm looking for another co-host on that because unfortunately his work is now taken away from that. Where we look called "This Crap Was on National Television," and we looked at Lyle Alzado's TV show that was produced in Canada called "Learning the Ropes," where he played a teacher by day and a pro wrestler by night. If it sounds terrible, it's because it was.
I'll always know Lyle for the Rich Tombstone Jackson clip that's out there where they're talking about how intimidating he was, and Alzado's talking bravado, like, "Oh, I'm going to come into I just got traded to the Broncos. I'm going to show everyone who's boss. I'm not taking crap from nobody." And then someone throws a towel at his feet and looks up and he's like, "Hello, Mr. Jackson. Good to meet you. What can I wipe your shoes or like, do you need another towel?" but Alzado was usually that kind of intimidator guy himself, even in the locker room, in a good way. Second in defensive player of the year by just a couple votes, would have won it if not splitting the vote.
I'm going to segue out of here just because I want both your takes. One person actually who never gets a whole lot of talk for the Hall is Alzado. And I don't know that I've never talked about him. I never really thought about him that way. But what do you think?
I'd have to look more at the stats that the selectors would look at to be objective rather than just Broncos, like person with a Broncos take. But the real big challenge for him is he went to Cleveland, right? He went to the Raiders. And he played at a high level in spurts for all of those teams. But the guys that you see getting in typically with a lot more momentum are the ones who play for the same team for the whole career.
Like we just
for
yeah,
well, also Gradishar and even I know there's been debate about which is the best Cincinnati defensive back, but Ken Riley was a lifelong Cincinnati Bengal and beloved by that fan base and organization and resonated. And also from a standpoint of selectors, I mean, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, you get people saying, "Oh, well, yeah, he's a Bengal or he's a Bear or whatever," rather than, well, he played for the Eagles and the Rams and Washington or whatever. I don't know how that plays, but we've seen trends of that lately.
I think a lot of
but
it
he
too.
was dominant. He was dominant in his heyday, but in terms of Broncos on that team, I mean, Louis Wright was more consistently great for a career. And if short careers are okay, the other guy I mentioned, and I know it's not in this game, but Tombstone Jackson, just a holy terror out there.
Well, to be honest, right, we also need to be aware Alzado admittedly started taking steroids in late 1960s and throughout his career, so he has that label on him. And he also died relatively young, and that's, you're not in front of the voters long enough. You're not in the queue. It's really hard. I mean, we do have guys who pass away and never really get credit. But when you pass away young, you kind of fall off that radar. When you're in your prime years of being in front of the committee as a potential modern candidate, and then in the senior, you get lost in that unless you really have such an outstanding career that it elevates you to the top. So there's a couple check marks against him, and sometimes that's all it takes to take a guy who we might sort of say, yeah, he's a good fit for the Hall of Very Good. Those two ticks, considering the depth of pool that we're talking about, just shuffles him off, and he's forgotten.
I think also a good point that Ron, you mentioned. When you're associated with the team, then also the team sometimes. Yep. Ron, you mentioned that you had to do a little bit more work than perhaps maybe because the team didn't necessarily push as much. For Gradishar. Saying that, when you're associated with one team, then you've got your whole fan base as you sort of spearheaded, collectively pushing. Randy is ours. When you have a player that's divided from that, was he thought of as a Raider? Was he a Brown? Was he a Bronco? A lot of his TV time was as a Raider, but his best years were as a Bronco. So who do you sort of take in? Maybe it didn't help Terrell Owens that Yeah, his best years was as a Niner, but do we really think of San Francisco fans saying, that's our guy? Yeah.
That's the selectors who are in the media who were like, okay, he can wait a year or two, sadly.
Yeah.
Because, you look at his numbers. He's at the top of everything.
But maybe it's different if he stays at one team, even if he is still a head case within that. I don't know.
Then you also have metrics of tackles, which became an issue for Randy because his defensive coordinator would do a recount on the Monday after, and every team would do it differently. And there wasn't really a standard at the time. I know John Turney's done amazing work trying to make apples to apples so that all of these grades can be compared, in a fair way. But so you don't always know what the impact of someone is back then, the way you do now in terms of some of the accounting. And it's hard to go back. If you didn't see the guy play, how can you say, oh, put him in the Hall of Fame?
The work that Pro Football Reference has done, just in sacks, I can only
exactly
imagine what we're going to try to do next. But anyway, I guess going back to the game, Morton drops back for a very incomplete pass. Looks like he overthrew Moses by maybe 15 yards. And I got to point this out. We've got a cheerleader shot. So I've counted this. Denver's now winning this. The Pony Express 4, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders 1. They actually mentioned that there's a rivalry between the cheerleaders. And it's like, okay, obviously they're being fed this by the producers. This is what they're meant to do. It's funny how if I would have been, I guess, my age watching it in the 70s, I never would have picked up on it at all. That this was all part of what they're trying to do. But it just, we're not even halfway through the first quarter.
Yeah, but this is pop culture at the time. TV show Mork and Mindy, they got
Robin
Williams in a Broncos cheerleader outfit for one of the scenes.
Yeah.
I actually found an interview with one of the ladies from the Pony Express. Because I was doing sort of like a deep dive in that. So I didn't realize, I guess I'll mention it now, because this only lasted until 1980, because apparently 2 of them were arrested for prostitution. So I guess not really when that sort of comes out, I guess they sort of shut that down. And apparently they didn't come back till 1993. So I guess it was pretty good. I mean, if it's working for the Cowboys, if you're a team, why not do it, I suppose. Anyway, 2nd and 10, he overthrows his target again, but it gets even worse. Now it's a holding penalty. So now you're 2nd and 20. Another shot of the cheerleaders. So it's 5-1. So Ron, you might win this one here. So I'm just, I'm doing this for you. Morton drops back while in the grasp of Waters, who is there in a safety blitz, tries to throw it away, and it goes right to Randy Hughes. Interception, and Hughes was a member of that Dirty Dozen draft class that we've talked about before. Yeah, so our first turnover, Dallas 1st and 10, Denver 25. Staubach throws on first down, complete to Dupree, wide open, gains 13. 1st and 10 on the 13. Newhouse comes in, rushes for 2 on a pitch. Dorsett jukes it to inside the 5, and we got 3rd and 2 on the 4. They keep it on the ground, and Dorsett for 1. It's 4th and inches, and Brookshire says that the War of 1812 was lost by less than that. Huh? What history book are you reading?
The history of kicking.
Yeah.
I don't remember that in my history book. I know that it's sort of even contentious who actually won that war.
That's right.
So, no, the War of 1812 was definitely not, but whatever. I wrote down here, Dallas is keeping it. They seem to have no fear right now of Denver's offense at the moment, and it's the right call. Dorsett gets it. He runs to the left and gets in the end zone. Touchdown. Hold on.
There we go.
Touchdown. Oh, I woke you up. I'm sorry for that prop.
That was rough.
Okay. Oh, I love a good pun. We got Dallas 7, Denver nothing. Yes, I know I woke you up.
Wait, and how long a drive was that?
Oh, I didn't write that
25 yards. I'm just pointing that out.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. I thought you were going
Short
to
field.
how time, well, in terms of time. Sorry.
No, 25 yards.
Yeah, short field, and that's one thing that we grew up on points off turnovers as a stat. They never mentioned that, but it's weird. I mean, it's these stats that have always been there that we just never paid attention to. All right, so kicks off. They mentioned Efren Herrera moved to the United States at age 15. He had a up and down game. They made a couple comments about him being from Mexico that were a little that didn't really.
Yeah, a little cringy there. Yeah.
A little cringy, but well, is what it is. Booms it, gets a great punt, 60 yards, but Schultz has got plenty of time, plenty of room, and returns to the 40. So Denver's got, again, decent field position, first and 10. And new running back, Rob Lytle comes in, 2 yards. 6'2" Denver and cheerleaders, because we've got competing ones. So they went from one to the next. Sorry. Second down, Morton drops back. Aaron Kyle intercepts, and it looks like this wasn't even close. Aaron Kyle
It wasn't.
He didn't even cut in front of a Bronco. He cut in front of his own a teammate.
Yes.
Returns that for 19 yards, and I wrote down that this has to feel like some kind of validation. He was a second-year player, and he replaced Mel Renfro in his last year. So Renfro was still here, but now he was the backup. So this had to feel so good for Kyle, because you're replacing a legend. How do you do that? Obviously, Aaron Kyle will never go down in history with Mel Renfro, but he's got an interception in a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so where's the ball?
Dallas got it first and 10 on the Denver 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like Ron reminding us. He knows exactly what the ball is.
Well, there's some significance of something that will happen in the second quarter. And I want to point out what the score and the length of the scoring drives before this player departed.
I know you're laying down something.
Yep.
Okay.
It's coming.
Newhouse gets a beautiful run for 9 yards. Dorsett gets a better one to the right side. Lewis Wright's the one who would push him out of bounds, and he gets all the way to the 5. Or sorry, the 8, because it's first and goal at the 8.
And they're coming back.
Yep. At this point?
Next play.
Okay. Yeah, because first and goal, Dorsett tries up the middle. He gets nothing. Second and goal, Staubach has Dupree open in the end zone, but Dupree falls on something. His feet. I believe Brookshire said pretty much the end. He just tripped over the end zone. It happens to everybody. Third and goal, Denver sniffs out the passing play, and again, the pocket collapses. Staubach's overwhelmed by 3 players. Alzado gets credited by the sack. Loss of 10 yards. And they have to go with the field goal, which Herrera makes.
17-yard drive.
Yep.
That's a 25-yard scoring drive and a 17-yard drive.
Mm-hmm. Yep, not a whole
no, and the reason I say this is as this game progresses, the Broncos defense, like a lot of people said, well, that was even in relation to Gradishar's career, well, Orange Crush was just a flash in the pan and all that stuff. And they got killed by the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, which we know what's going to happen, right? But you're talking about mostly short drives like that because of the turnovers. And give Dallas credit for their defense. But don't demean the Denver defense on this game. I mean, what they did, this could have been 55. I'm just saying, when people who weren't around like us at the time of this game go back and they just start looking at Pro Football Reference and other stuff, it's easy to cherry pick and say, oh, it was a domination in terms of the quality of the players and how well they played in terms of the best players for the Broncos.
They gave props the whole time. But then you look at how NFL sort of looked at it. It's Super Bowl 12. Dallas destroys or demolishes Denver.
Yes, exactly.
It's not, and that's not quite the case. I mean, Dallas did outplay them, absolutely, but there's no reason for anyone on that defense, like you said, Ron, to go back and say, I didn't do my part.
Yep.
No, Not a single one of them. All right, so Herrera kicks off, and it's taken by Upchurch at the 13. He gets 15 yards. So the Broncos are starting on their own 28. We got another switch at running back. Lonnie Perrin gets no gain, gets it again for 4 yards. 3rd and 6, Morton's chased by Randy White, and Morton throws it away. Was caught by Perrin, who probably shouldn't have caught it, but whatever. It's a 7-yard loss. We'll be forced to punt, and this quarter actually went by really, really fast, felt. Right before that, though, they were getting a little chippy with each other. Just you can see the frustration just from Denver. Like, and that happens all the time in football.
Well, and I think the one thing that I had sort of, forgotten about, having not looked at the whole game for a while, and I think it gets highlighted more in the second half. This was a very physical game. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, and then in the era, we would kind of expect that, but still, they're playing hard, especially on the defense on both sides. We'll get some of the issues with the turnovers and whatnot, but this was a physical game. And you could, I think that was one indication of it. And you will see it throughout the game. I think, as I mentioned, I think the commentator pointed out, there's some hard hitting going well into this game when it's still a close game. So this was a much more physical rather than finesse game, which if the defense isn't going in but just upon reflection, again, you go back and you look at the game years later, look at the score, look at the stats, maybe you wouldn't get that impression, but this was a very hard hitting physical game, I thought.
Very much so.
Oh.
So on the punts, it's not a great punt here by Bucky. A little over 30 yards, more frustration on the field. Dallas will start on their own 43. All right, so let's see what they do here. Pitch to Dorsett gets 2, but Rafferty gets called for a false start. So now we got 2nd and 13 on that because Denver looks confused on the next play. They nearly encroached, didn't happen, but because of just a bit of misposition, we got a swing pass to Pearson that gains 11 yards. And so we got 3rd and 2 now. Pitch to Newhouse, works. Another first down. Dallas 1st and 10 on the Denver 42. Dallas also pulls into within 3 to 6 because there's a butt shot of the cheerleaders now.
Oh.
You're upset that it's of the butt shot or that they pulled within 3?
Yes, they're within a field goal.
They're within a field goal. Yeah, there we go.
If cheerleaders could kick. Oh, they do. Never mind. Footballs.
Usually I'm the most inappropriate person on this panel, I'll have you know. Another first down. Staubach throws to Dupree for a 19-yard gain. 1st and 10 on the 23. We get into the red zone. Dorsett rushes for 4. 2nd and 6. Staubach throws to Dorsett at the 2, but it's incomplete. We got a shotgun, and we've got one pattern. Again, to Ron's point, every time it's a shotgun, it's just not working for Dallas. Can't find anyone, and he's chasing and has to throw it well out of bounds. The Broncos fans are teased again. It looks like it's caught by a Bronco in the end zone, but it's not.
No.
It's a 6-yard sack because he threw it just out of bounds. Again, one great thing that we could actually see from that overhead camera shot. So barely. And I guess even now, like, let's say they would have called that like a completion or an interception. Is there enough to overturn that? Even on what we see now? Like, I don't know. That's about as close as it gets.
To your point,
the only advantage we'd have today, right, is we'd have camera views down the sideline. You'd have more camera options to go to if it went back
to enhance to that shot.
Yes, and now in this era, we just don't have that kind of all the angles that you can come at when it comes to sidelines. One down the sideline to see was there a toe over. But based on the time, if the rule was in place and the technology was the same, I think it'd be tough to turn that over. It's that close with what we can see.
Yeah, and I can't see. I don't have the film in front of me, but what color shoes the Cowboys wore?
I want to say
it was white, I think.
Yeah. Okay, and that's an issue, especially in that stadium, because my Broncos had a situation where they blocked an extra point a few years ago, and ran it down the sideline, and the guy had white shoes.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough, speaking of replay, there wasn't enough conclusive evidence. When Will Parks went down the sideline, they couldn't tell. It looked like he was inbounds. It was ruled good, and they couldn't overturn it.
We're still decades before instant replay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Even if you would have, like, if they didn't sort of like see that, that could have gone again the other way. And I just wrote down, like, the Broncos just can't catch a break.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's 4 plays already that could have been big game-changing turnovers. I mean, if there, it would have taken away points. The other ones were deep in Dallas's territory, a couple of them. So,
but
go
ahead.
But the Denver offense would have had to do something with it,
right?
True.
And Dallas's defense was very formidable.
But then momentum changes. You're trying
I
would have tried something else.
Yeah, I just don't want to sound like I could get some orange pom-poms if you give me a second, but I don't want to sound like I'm waving the pom-poms or
no,
saying
I think it's a totally fair.
They stole the game. It was a fix. Oh, kind of like
wait till it's a Saints game. I will not be objected.
But it's it's a fair assessment, right? It's close game, and the ball is bouncing and it's going one way. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and we see it in a lot of games. And yeah, as we said earlier, the perception of this game years later doesn't match the reality. This actually
not at all
is an intriguing close game, even though we see a lot of turnovers. In a lot of ways, it's a close, competitive game well into the late third quarter, early fourth quarter. Yeah.
So Herrera makes a field goal. It's 43-yard field goal, and it's now 13-0. So Ron, you remember watching this, and Paul, you remember watching this. Ron, how old would you have been then?
Oh, I can't remember. Okay. I would say like 5 years old. I'll go with that.
Well, okay. Right,
no, I mean, I'm old enough to remember all the details going back to even Super Bowl 7.
For you.
So I'm kind of like wondering, you're watching, aren't we all on this panel? As you're watching this, do you have like a feeling of dread? Because sometimes Paul and I, we try to put ourselves in fan base positions at this point, and you're thinking, okay, this just isn't going our way. But it's still so early.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a game with kind of like gum stuck to the bottom of your shoe kind of game, where it's like, oh my gosh, we can't catch a break. The team, they keep on scoring, even though the defense has done a great job. Our offense has to get it in order, but the offense most of the year, other than big plays to Haven Moses, and I think Riley Odoms was on the team too. So those are the two big guys downfield. And if Dallas is shutting that down and basically saying, I dare you to run on us, it's going to be a long day, especially if there's turnovers. So, I mean, Denver was just, I'll show you a book cover here. And it's a good friend, Woody Page wrote this one.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. It's called Orange Madness. And there was just so much going, like the whole town, Denver's like a college town when it comes to the Broncos, like more than other cities are about their teams. This is like the heart and soul of Denver. And I think it was like a little bit of a letdown at the time. I wasn't living in Denver at the time, but from people I know who were, it was just like, oh, it's like a gut punch. Please, let's get something started. I was back east.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm trying to put that in also the then perspective. I mean, Denver, when home of the all Big Four sports, not there's only a handful of cities that can say that, but back then the Nuggets were just out of the ABA.
Right.
Very good.
And you had the other Rockies.
The first Rockies, and they stunk.
Expansion team.
Baseball wasn't even a thought to put there at that point.
The Denver Zephyrs, and then there was another team before them.
It's still
but it also played in Mile High Stadium. Believe it.
Did it really?
Yeah. Towards the end, yeah. At times.
I remember seeing the baseball.
And then I mean, here's a true one for you, completely off the topic. Denver Avalanche, major indoor soccer league team, circa early '80s. Oh. But until the Avalanche came and basically inherited a team that added Patrick Roy, that was the first major pro championship other than like the Denver Gold indoor football.
So
I
like
mean,
I was reading all about Bronco Mania, like going into this, and I'll also give the fans there a lot of credit. Like at the end of this game, I'm sort of going fast forward, but I don't want to forget this. At the end of it, where they're not going to win, and you see this big group of Broncos fans, and they're just,
yep,
yeah,
they're great. It's phenomenal to watch. We love good fans. We obviously don't like bad fans, but it's really great to see how they supported them even in defeat.
yes. My friend Greg was one of them, and it's all about being a good fan and supporting teams. It's a lot more entitlement. Hey, I bought tickets, and I expect you to do whatever for me, and if a player has a personal situation, well, sorry that your wife's like in the hospital, but I expect you to win and you missed the kick. And but back then especially, the fans were just behind these guys. They'd energized the city. I mean, the Broncos almost left town in their first 10 years, if not for Floyd Little, being the franchise. So this was a big deal. This energized the whole town and gave hope to a lot of people and excitement that carried to the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so no more bad luck on the kickoff. Upchurch return.
Oh, by the way, Kurt, at this point, the Cowboys kicker Efren Hera probably should have packed his bags and went in the locker room because for him, this is as best as it gets. Right? We won't spoil it. I can just tell you,
yes,
it ain't getting any better for him the rest of the game. Let's just say
if it was Tom Brookshire, he would have said he should have vamonosed.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Or something really.
Yeah.
Oh man. Anywho,
let's tease for later.
Yes. Upchurch returns to the 25, but we got a holding penalty for 15 yards. Denver's now starting on their own 10. Here's something interesting too. They mentioned how Louis Wright had a separated shoulder. They would later say that wasn't the case. So did he?
I don't know, but at some point, Randy Gradishar also leaves the game.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
So yeah,
I can't remember the exact time point.
I think I've got that, but
I've got it in my notes here. We'll get to that. Certainly.
Yeah, we're not sure yet.
But Kurt, I saw the same comment, and it seemed weird. Like he did or he didn't. I don't know.
Well, the sideline,
maybe nowadays, sideline reporting, and we don't know everything about injuries, but probably a little bit more in that case. I don't know whether he got a wind or a hint or something, and then he said it, and then he realized, well, I really don't know, so I'm going to backtrack. It was kind of weird thing to say. I thought it was awkward.
We might have Hall of Famers here in the sideline reporters.
Yeah, we shouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go back to that later. Because that's going to be the case. Lytle's back in at running back. He gets 5 yards before tackled by Jethro Pugh. 2nd and 5, Morton drops back, and it looks like he's going deep for Haven Moses, but he underthrows it, and Benny Barnes, who had good coverage, he gets it. That's our 3rd interception. So again,
and
why couldn't it have been called for pass interference?
Yeah,
just because.
Yeah, just because.
I'm sorry.
And I was trying to keep track of some of this because I was intrigued by pressure on Morton and what impact that had, especially. And maybe I missed this one, but that was certainly a factor for some of the play. But there were a number of times, and I noted this one. It was just a bad pass. I mean, there were some of that happened. The myth behind this game, right? And there's some truth to it. A lot of pressure from that front four, and he was harassed, and you see it a lot during the game, and it was certainly a factor in turnovers and et cetera. And like Ron pointed out, the Broncos really couldn't get past that in terms of establishing a running game. But in this case, Morton had a bad game, and sometimes, and this is, I think, for me, I thought it was a bad pass.
It was.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens to everyone. Dallas first and 10 on their own 40. Newhouse gets 2 yards in the first carry, and he was lucky to get that. On the sideline, and that's where we're talking about the sideline reporters, one of them is Paul Horning, and I'm like, holy crap, that's a pretty good room doing this. Because I started, for me, I don't remember a lot of the sideline reporters of the 80s, and then I don't know when it changed to pretty much being all women. whatever. As long as they know their job, who cares, right?
Yeah. You have to just perspective on why you're seeing these folks on the sidelines. When they played, they didn't make bank. Even the top players in the NFL, the owners controlled pretty much everything as far as player movement and things like that. And so, yeah, they would get jobs in the off season. And Horning even,
Horning wasn't playing
TV
at this point, was he?
What? No. But what I'm saying is, when they retired, it wasn't like they were, hey, I got like $20 million in the bank. And I know he had some challenges when he was playing too, but in terms of money management and how he used the money. But I'm just saying that was something back then that we take for granted now. All these players haven't made. Even someone who's like a 7th round draft pick is going to bring home $500,000 or whatever.
I think a lot of it too, you just get to stay in the game, because if you're like, I've interviewed a couple people who, were not big stars in football, but I always sort of like, okay, well, what was your end game? How did you get into broadcasting? When did you plan that? And you're limited to what you're able to do because there's limited spots. Because if you're not going into coaching or some type of television or radio or whatever kind of medium, what are you doing if you want to stay in that game? Yeah. So it could just be that they're offered this opportunity. Yeah, I'm going to take it. Why not? But yeah, that blew my mind too. Just seeing him there, because I know we had some other games that we covered, we didn't actually see them. So this was sort of different for me. Let's see. He mentions that Barnes is hurt and can't put a lot of weight on his right ankle. So we, a bit of an injury thing, but we saw him later though, I believe. Staubach completes a pass to Newhouse for 4, but we got a holding penalty and it goes back. So 2nd and 18 on their own 32. Staubach, it's incomplete to Pearson, who just can't hold on a screen pass. And then the announcers are getting really creepy, because as we got more shots of the cheerleaders, Brookshire is saying, there's a little competition down there between the cheerleaders. Summerall, there's also a game.
What's the score, though?
7-4 Pony Express.
Good.
3rd and 18, Staubach is in shotgun, and Summerall said, this hasn't worked all day, and they can't. He's sacked from behind by Reuben Carter. It's a 4-yard loss. The Cowboys are forced to punt.
Yeah, that's Denver's 4th sack.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in the game, they would have 5. The Cowboys would have 4. And again, I just put that out in the narrative of this game. And it goes back to what Ron has said. The Orange Crush came to play the defense, and they played hard all game. And that certainly is something that they should be proud of, in the sense that this was not a blowout, and that they were certainly holding the Cowboys back, and their defense rose to the occasion on this game. There's no doubt about that.
So here,
it's forgotten, but it's true.
I want your take on this one so bad here, because I watched this play 5 times, and I'm still stuck on stupid here with all this. So Danny White goes to punt. I don't know what Schultz was trying to do, whether he was trying to block for Upchurch or not, but he seems to trip over his own feet. It bounces off his helmet. So now it's a live ball, and it's recovered by Bruce Hunter of the Cowboys. What the hell happened here?
Tripped over his feet, basically.
Yeah, simple as that.
It happens. Ask Jackie Smith.
Yeah.
A few years later, the next year. I mean, it happens. I mean, you try to be instinctive, but they're human. Mistakes will happen.
I just wondered if
the ball starts bouncing and
block.
Also, too, don't forget, indoor Super Bowl, you're prime time. Look up and you see lights and stuff like that. So that could, and with Super Bowl and them trying to make this a grandiose, production. I'm not trying to make excuses, but that could be. I'd be interested to know what he saw or what happened. But it might just be, hey, my cleats got stuck on the AstroTurf, and then and then I'm kind of wiggling and wobbling, and
even the commentators seem a little confused there. And I'm looking at Upchurch's reaction, because he was just absolutely livid.
Yeah,
so,
I made I put that in my notes as well. So something got him really annoyed, whether he thought it could have been better to recover it, shouldn't have been fumbled. Maybe he's just frustrated at yet another turnover. But yeah, he's really livid, right? And I think they're trying to get him off the field, and we can't quite figure out who he's yelling at. Whether at first I thought maybe he was mad at the refs, but he was pretty upset getting. So something really set him off in terms of this, play and whatever happened. Obviously didn't go their way, but that was a real visual for me to how angry. And we're still partway through the second quarter, but
that's a 15 that's a 15-yard penalty and a possible ejection today.
Yeah, and let me explain too, because we're talking about plays and more mechanical kind of things and emotions. Obviously, emotions are getting a little bit frustrated with all this, right?
Right.
But I've met Rick Upchurch a few times, and I think once back in the day. Very mellow, very, very nice, polite kind of guy. Like, he was very competitive, but he wasn't like, that was very out of character for him to get that, like, react that way and show his colors that way. And if any of you have seen the eye test podcast that Randy Gradishar was just on after being selected as a senior, he was even complimenting how everyone really competed on both sides of the ball, even though there were a lot of adversity like that. And it was a very cohesive team that liked each other.
I don't know if he was dating this woman at this time, but apparently, because he was linked with Condoleezza Rice.
She was going to the University of Denver at the time. And she lived in the Denver area, but then also went to grad school at the time. I don't know if they dated. And during the Gradishar Hall of Fame stuff, when I was trying to suggest to Broncos PR multimedia people, I said, well, you can have the owner or whatever talk, but do you know Condoleezza Rice lived in Denver during the Orange Crush heyday? So, I know she's, I think, from Ohio, but she could probably speak to what she saw and the excitement and Randy and all that.
I read an interview from Upchurch where he said that it didn't surprise him how successful she would become. She said, like, after she would ask everything about, like, okay, on every play, so why did you do this, why did you do that, and how. So it didn't surprise her at all that is she part of the management group now or ownership group? Or
she's a part owner of the Broncos.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. She's part of the ownership group. I mean, she's a secondary owner, but she's visited training camp, and she was up for potentially talked about for commissioner before Roger Goodell got it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, on the periphery, but still, a brilliant mind and a very impassioned about football. Like, she knows her stuff, and she would be successful as a team president or some of that sort later on, if that were to come up.
Interesting. Well, I mean, she's not. What, she's 60?
Yeah, I believe so. Something. Well, she went to college and then and I think graduated in the early 80s from the University of Denver, which we call DU. Great hockey program there too.
I still have to go see a college hockey game when I'm out here.
It's a great program there. 9-time NCAA champions, tied with Michigan for the most.
I got to go down to North Dakota while I'm still here.
That's a great place.
Yeah. I'm supposed to go to see a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert, but Snow had other ideas. But anyway, 1st and 10 for Dallas on the Denver 40. So again, those short fields. Dorsett rushes for 2, and on the sideline, we still see Upchurch is livid, and at this point, just unconsolable. He just has to get it out of the system, like we all do when we're mad. Dorsett rushes for 19, all of it after contact, with just beautiful rush by him. So 1st and 10 on the 19. Pearson rushes for 1, and on the next play, we have a tackle for loss. Bob Swenson gets that. 3rd down, the Cowboys are hit with a false start, so 3rd and 17. Staubach's looking for Butch Johnson in the end zone, but it's deflected by Lewis Wright. And as Paul sort of foreshadowed, we got our first missed field goal by Herrera, 43-yard attempt. This one, I believe, was wide left, I think, because it alternated. Doesn't matter. It's a miss.
So you're talking about like 30-yard drives, pretty much. If Dallas, even with Denver being on defense for a lot, but with all the turnovers and all the adversity, you're talking like 30, 40-yard drive. 40-yard drives like a lot sustained drive. And that's what always amazed me about this game, just looking back and then comparing to what I remembered and thinking, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and it's a great point. The laws of field possession, it's pretty hard to win when you're 20, 30 yards behind everyone else, like your opponent from where you start. So Denver's got it on their own 26. Tackle for loss with Armstrong. Keyworth on 2nd and 13 gains the 3 back, but we've got an offside against Dallas, which negates it. So 2nd and 8. You get back to Armstrong, he gets 4. Denver takes a timeout, and Brookshire mentions that Morton is getting made fun of for his finances. I had to look that up. I didn't know anything about that. So I found a New York Times article the weekend of the Super Bowl. Apparently, he had declared bankruptcy from when he was back in Dallas. He had opened a disco that failed, a restaurant that failed, and he owed a pile of money to the IRS. And they basically implied in this article that that the league was making sure that gamblers didn't get to him. I'm not saying that he threw anything at all, but if Brookshire wouldn't have said that, I would have had no clue.
Pretty rich that Paul Horning's the sideline reporter in this game.
True, right?
Just from an irony standpoint, no disrespect to him or his career, but
that's like, but Brookshire's out there trying to defend it. But I mean, I guess this was a big news at the time. Wasn't obviously I didn't know anything about that, looking back, but I can just imagine how that would be played up now in a Super Bowl. Like that would be all that would be discussed.
Yeah, it'd be crazy. Yeah. And what about that? If you're a player in the 70s and the 80s, I think you hit the trifecta of how to lose all your money by investing in, let's repeat, a disco, a restaurant, and the IRS wants their piece. He hit the trifecta in, squandering away money as a football player in the 70s and 80s. He hit all 3 of those bad financial decisions.
Yeah. In the NFL, I mean, it's not too long ago, like 7-8 years ago, that Tony Romo got in trouble because he was going to do an appearance at a fantasy football event in Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, come on. I mean, I understand they want to be vigilant, but I mean, I've met Craig Morton and I know people who know him. This is a good dude. I mean, but they weren't making big money back then. No. Someone's making 60 grand. That's like big money. 100 grand. Wow. He's like the guy. And so that's just crazy. I understand the NFL with its vigilance, but letting that leak like the week of the game, I mean, someone at the NFL was talking about it to someone.
Yeah. It was a pretty that was half that article was basically saying we're going to make sure that nobody gets to him. And I don't want to say to their credit, but I mean, like when that's your first half and your second half saying, oh, but Morton would never do that and no one's going to get to him. But that's your first half of that. And
well, I mean, keep in mind, he's playing against the team, against Staubach, who beat him out to be the Cowboys starting quarterback. He kind of got Wally pipped. And then here he is at the chance for revenge to come back and beat that team. And some of the things people said about him, that he wasn't good enough or this or that. I mean, that's, the guy had every incentive. And to this day, if you talk to any of the old time Broncos, whether it's Randy Gradishar, whether it's Lewis Wright, Craig Morton is beloved by everyone in the organization. Jimmy Sacamano, who's the PR guy, who's now in the Hall of Fame. Craig Morton is universally just loved by these folks.
Apparently also by my dogs, who are decided that they're going to be vocal again. If you want to see the dogs, you can go at Jasper_the_friendly corgi on Instagram. Might as well plug it. Since they've decided that that's what they're going to do right now.
Are they new sponsors? They're new sponsors?
Yeah. They pay me in kibble.
And bits.
And bits, yeah. Kibbles and bits. 3rd and 4, Morton does complete one. This to Jack Doblin, but a motion penalty puts it back 5 yards. It's that. 3rd and 9, he completes to Doblin again, who fumbles it right away back to Randy Hughes. It could not have been an easier fumble. It was like almost like a baby, ole. And again, like, if it wasn't for bad luck, Denver would have no luck at all.
Yeah, and all right, everybody, our viewers here, hold on, because things are going to get a little wild and crazy in the next 4 minutes of this game before halftime. So let's see how we roll out this play-by-play, because there's a heck of a lot going on here. And that's the start of some really, bizarre, fast-paced back and forth, which we're going to get into. But heads up, hold on, everybody. It's going to get a bumpy ride here.
All right, Winnie, do you want to apologize for barking?
Probably won't.
Probably won't. No, she's not particularly good at that. I also noticed it's the first time that the Denver fans, who I did praise, but they're getting frustrated because the boo birds are coming out. I think that's really one of the rare times that did happen. Dallas has got 1st and 10 on Denver 27. Dorsett rushes to the right side, gains 8. The camera cuts to the Southern University band, will be the halftime show. We're not watching that. We
couldn't find coverage of it for folks who'd like to watch us and criticize or laugh at the halftime show. Can't cover that one today. Sorry.
No Janet Jackson? No Janet Jackson?
Okay.
No.
It's funny. We've been talking about all these cheerleaders and stuff like that. When I watched that game, I went to my friend's house and all we did was play poker during the halftime show. And then all the wives came down to watch that. And then, so one of the guys I worked with, right? So the next day, because everyone was talking about that. So like, how did we miss that?
Yeah.
And none of us even noticed it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Newhouse gets the ball in 2nd and 2, goes to the left outside and gains 10. So we got a first and goal on the 9. This is where, apparently on that play, that's where Gradishar is injured and out with an ankle issue, and he's coming off the screen. Out of the game. He would come back, but as to what you said, Ron, I mean, like, now you've got your best player, who they did mention that he was hurt going into this.
Yeah, and this is someone who, like, a few years later, like, broke his ribs, and they put a flak jacket on him that looks like a monstrosity, and he didn't miss any game. He never missed a game in his career, and still got Sporting Nose All Pro that year. But so this is a guy who's a warrior. There are people who saw him during the week and would go to his wife and say that she would say to the coach, to Joe Collier, there's no way he's going to be able to play this week. And then he'd be in the game and have like 15 tackles and a forced fumble or something like that. Yeah. This guy's heart and soul.
I've got a cracked rib, and like just every time I try to sneeze, I can't even imagine playing football with that.
Yeah.
Well, the guy, and you look over my shoulder, you guys know the story, but for those watching, I mean, this is a guy who in retirement, 40 years after retirement, had, you see all those violent plays stopping short yardage at the line of scrimmage. The guy had shoulder replacement surgery, had his arm in a sling for almost a year. Like the guy is just indomitable, like as good as they get. And as like you can't get him. He perseveres.
Mm-hmm. Well, outside screen goes to Newhouse. That's a 7-yard loss, and we're at the 2-minute warning. 2nd and goal on the 17, and for the first time in the game, they're going to Drew Pearson. The first time in the game, that's when they're going for him. Staubach threw it too low. It's incomplete, and I just wrote down, I can't believe this is the first time that he was a target.
Sorry. I'm wiping some tears. You said Drew Pearson. I'm sorry.
Oh, draw. Knock it off.
3rd and goal. Staubach rolls right, but it's mostly a weird lateral because it's sort of how the way it looked. I've never seen a longer 1-yard pass in my life.
Yeah.
Chased from behind by Alzado, and they're just gushing over Lyle, who just caught him from behind. We have another sideline reporter, Nick Buonaconti.
Yep.
Yep.
Tells us that Gradishar has been taken off the field. I wrote down that Nick Buonaconti might be one hell of a football player, but as a sideline reporter, he is office furniture.
He's great in beer commercials. He's great in light beer commercials.
I'm sure.
May he rest in peace.
I don't know how many takes it got him to even do that, but for this role,
yeah,
my God. Yeah. I think I wrote down he should never be allowed near a microphone again. Dallas also pulls up to 7-5 in the cheerleader shot.
Oh no!
Yeah, this is like a sort of like you watching those Bud Bowls, the Bud Light and Bud. People actually used to bet on that. I never won those. Anyway.
Wait, the Puppy Bowl. You could have a redone Puppy Bowl with your crew.
I'm not gonna lie. That is how my wife and I start every Super Bowl Sunday, is watching the Puppy Bowl. I'm not gonna lie. We love the Puppy Bowl. We absolutely, was it the Roughs versus the Fluffs?
There you go.
I absolutely love it. Herrera, 32-yard field goal, wide right.
Second one.
Yep. So Denver's got 1st and 10 on their own 20. Let's see what they do with limited time. Nothing. Morton completes to Odoms for 10 yards, who fumbles it immediately right into Randy Hughes. We talk about time. Go ahead.
So when they voted for MVP, they wrote down Randy and didn't complete it, right?
Something.
I'm sorry.
They didn't even mention his name at the end. I mean, you have to give it to somebody, I suppose, but I don't know.
Let's just say quarterback pressures are as an important stat as quarterback sacks, and we'll revisit that later in the game when it comes to Randy Orton.
Yes.
Yeah. Denver's 3rd fumble. Not that I'm keeping track,
but I
think there's more to come.
Yeah,
so Cowboys are going to have their share. So here we go.
Yeah, I mean, Morton will just say he had 4 completions of the day. 2 of them were fumbled right away by his guys. It's just anyway. Just pointing that out, so maybe putting that in perspective. So 1st and 10 on the Denver 28, but tit for tat. Staubach completes to Dupree, who decides that he's going to do his Riley Odoms impression, and he fumbles it after of course, he got hit pretty hard by Foley, and Tom Jackson recovers. So Tom Jackson, there we go. 1st and 10 on their own 12, but there's only 49 seconds left. It's again different sort of time. Now we'd see quarterbacks go for it at this point, but that's not how they thought back then. Lytle rushes for 4, but it's a 5-yard penalty for illegal procedure. So 1st and 15 on the 7, they stay on the ground. Perrin gets 4. Dallas timeout because they think, well, maybe they can get something here. During the timeout, the commentators are talking about how Gil Brandt and the linebackers coach, I didn't know he was the linebackers coach, Ernie Stautner. Wow. Holy crap. That's amazing.
Actually, he was a defensive line coach, Ernie Stautner was.
Okay.
Yeah. Trivia question. And a trivia question. There's a team that has his number retired.
Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Good. Exactly.
I don't know which one of us said it first, so.
At a time when he played the Pittsburgh Steelers,
he was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Bad. Oh. Let's just we're not talking about the steel curtain defense book. It was decades before that, but yeah.
It was called the Stautner defense.
Yeah. That's about
Buchner and 10 others. 2nd and 15, Lytle gets Denver's first rushing first down. And this is notable because Renfro got the tackle, and I believe this is his last one in pro football.
Yeah, and how much time's left in the half?
36 seconds.
Okay, so the Broncos went 29 minutes and 64 seconds. Well, not 60. I can't. My brain's not working. And 34 minutes and 26 seconds, right? Without a first down until then.
Yeah.
That's not exactly a recipe for
their second. So one first
success.
Down, or their second first down of the game so far. Lytle gets they get their third, 13 yards. Denver takes a timeout, and they're on their own 40 with 17 seconds. Maybe get a field goal out of this. But before we get that, Denver pulls up 8-5 because we have another shot of the Pony Express. Morton drops back he's going for Odoms, and it was complete to the other team. Mark Washington gets it for Dallas, and he runs it back 27 yards. He had 13 career
I'm trying to do 4. Okay, sorry.
He had 13 what?
Well, I was saying Washington had 13 career interceptions, only one in the playoffs. This was it. So,
well, he's known for another play in the playoffs that you guys probably already talked about.
Yep. We talked about him having actually not a bad game, but got, not Super Bowl.
Lynn Swan, my gosh,
made him look bad, but actually he didn't play bad. But when you give up 2 historical catches in a Super Bowl like that,
blanket coverage.
Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes.
And again, I noted this was a bad throw by Morton. It was not so much the pressure; it was just a bad throw.
I mean, you get hit the way he was hit. I mean, it probably affects your body.
Sure, and you're probably rushing the pass as well. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. He's not really that mobile. He's getting out of the pocket, so there's a lot more there. I just meant this was not a case where he was being hit when he threw it, and it was a bad throw, unfortunately for him.
Dallas is a 1st and 10 on the Denver 35. We've got 6 seconds left, so maybe they'll try to get a field goal. I wrote down that right now they're not in Herrera's range, which seems to be shrinking his range.
It's the 4th quarter.
Yeah, exactly. They complete to Preston Pearson for 8 yards. He gets right out of bounds with 1 second left. 44-yard attempt, wide left. And they even 13-0 Dallas. Brookshire says, well, the loneliest man in that locker room is going to be Herrera.
Dallas. So Dallas, 3 missed field goals. And Denver 7 total turnovers, 4 interceptions, 3 fumbles. That's kind of where we're at. A sloppy, messy game, especially in the latter part of that second quarter.
But you're still in it.
It's Cowboys 13, Denver 0. We know the Denver offense is but like we often say, Kurt, they're still in this game. Balls bounce funny ways, a turnover here, a big play here. It would seem, and of course, many people would also say the Cowboys left a lot of points by missing 3 field goals. This could have been 20, 23, nothing, who knows, but it's not. But I'm just saying, at the end result at halftime, all that matters after all of this calamity and all these bouncing balls and missed field goals is a 13-point lead by the Cowboys at half. And sloppy game, but it's still a game. Yeah.
Yeah, and this reminds me of Super Bowl 48 a little bit from the Broncos standpoint when Seattle kind of out-physicaled them. And if Herrera makes those 3 field goals, it's the exact same halftime score. It would have been 22.
Yeah.
Zip.
Well, so we'll start off the third quarter. No halftime coverage here. Herrera kicks off. Schultz turns it 25 yards, and we got first down on their own 35. They show the first half stats, and Brookshire says, it's kind of closer than you'd think. But time of possession tells a totally different story. It's like 20-9. And again, we got to hand it to the Broncos defense. They were gassed out there. How can you not be? We've seen this so many times, and the performance.
And with Gradishar out, and this is something he said on the eye test podcast to Clark and Ira, he was just praising the defense and how well we played and how we stayed together in there. And the thing is, never once did he ever say, oh yeah, I was out of the game at the end of the second quarter and I didn't play in the second half. He was acting as if he was in there, like he was taking responsibility for it, even though and they all took it to heart. But that's how unified that team was, and how much they cared about each other, and they stuck together. 7 turnovers. You think of current teams now with some of the egos and high maintenance personalities, type A. You'd see these defensive players in the quarterback's face. We just had a situation in Denver where someone, I can't remember, last year something happened, or the other, where an offensive lineman started yelling at the backup quarterback to shut up. And this was a team that stuck together, and that's why they sustained. And the Cowboys were just so physical, and they were playing to win.
Yeah. Well, Keyworth gets the first carry, doesn't get anything. Armstrong gets a good block on the right side, and he gets an 18-yard gain. All right, so 1st and 10 on the Dallas 47. Morton overthrows Dolbin. And on 2nd and 10, Keyworth on an option rushes for 6. Denver also pulls ahead on the Pony Express, 8-4. And
by the way, in my notes, this is where I point out.
Oh, okay.
We are seeing a lot of the cheerleaders.
Oh, yeah.
The what?
Well, we were seeing a lot of the cheerleaders. This is when I noticed. I wasn't keeping count, but this is when I'm like, what are we seeing here?
They close in on one of them, right? And then she's going like, "Hi, Pat."
Yeah.
Then Pat goes,
"Call me."
Well, do you want to see a bunch of turnovers, a bunch of missed field goals? Both teams, right? Or, hey, look at the cheerleaders.
Exactly.
Sure.
I think
we need to be entertained.
Squirrel, look, squirrel.
I think if the score was 24-24, this was their planned period.
Yeah, probably.
They were not deviating from this. I'm not saying that there weren't any females in that truck, in the production truck, but actually maybe I'm saying that there probably weren't.
Probably wasn't.
Probably not.
And you're in prime time too.
Yep.
Later in prime time when it's okay to be a little
I can't believe I didn't
revealing.
3rd and 4. Morton drops back, and Harvey Martin is there. He's chasing him, and he had to throw it away to avoid the sack. 4th and 4, and I got, okay, Denver's getting a bit of luck. As Dill punts, it was a designed pass, but he had nobody. He ran, was sacked, but we got 12 men on the field. Penalty, 5 yards, first down. Don't matter how you get first downs. Didn't we just watch how many penalties in the last game we did?
Yep. Yeah.
How many first downs off penalties? So 1st and 10 on the Dallas 36. But Morton's just not having a good day. He underthrows Moses. Keyworth rushes for 5, so you have 3rd and 5. That's manageable. But Armstrong can only get 1. Jim Turner gets his first field goal attempt, and maybe that's why he was voted. He had a 2nd place on an MVP because he makes it. Denver's on the board. You've got points on the board. That's what you've got to get. All right, Winnie. Field goal. Okay. Dallas 13, Denver 3. But before we kick off, the Pony Express 9-4. Turner kicks off.
They're starting to pull away.
CNN might be calling it soon. I don't know. I was going to have a prop of an empty roll of toilet paper, and I just said, insert your news thing here because I don't want to insult anybody in their news. So,
you're okay.
Oh, okay. Turner kicks off. It's returned by Butch Johnson for 15, and Dallas is at 1st and 10 on their own 21. Newhouse goes straight up the gut for 2 yards. Pass Newhouse gets another 5. 3rd and 3. Staubach gets a 7-yard pass for a first down, but negated on the legal man downfield. So we're back to 3rd and 13. Staubach escapes the rush and is tackled by Gradishar.
Yeah, so he's back in the game. I just made a note. I think they mentioned it. I noticed when watching the game, he had come back in during earlier the series, and this is they realized he was back in the game because of the tackle. But yeah, he's back in, taped up, ready to go.
Amazing. So, someone who fell to 14th in the draft because they thought he might only last a year or 2 or 3, and that's it.
Why did they think that? Was he injury prone?
He had some medicals on his knees.
Okay. Well, Denver's happy, and we have another Pony Express shot, 10-5. I think we might be calling it pretty soon. But we'll see. Punt by Danny White. Upchurch has a small return on route. This is one of their better coverages. But I mean, like we were saying in that last game, Paul, because we got to watch Ray Guy. And that's when Paul sort of mentioned that's the first time he ever even thought about hang time. Really, we didn't even think of that back then.
Yeah, and think of the yardage back then. If you look at current punting, if you had 40 yards of punt, don't even think about net. Just think if you could punt for 42, 41 yards, that was like you're one of the best. And of course, Ray Guy is like 45.
Yeah. What do you mean? But I got it just as far. Yeah, but it took longer. Oh, rushing downfield. It's amazing it took that long to figure that out.
And don't forget, you're in a dome.
Yep.
That's also true. Okay, so Denver's got first down on their own 35. Morton again misses Haven Moses on the sideline. Second down, Lyle rushes for nothing. Third down, Martin and White break through the pocket. Martin gets credited with the sack. So it's 4th and 19, and Dilfs has got a punch. Not a great one. Only 32 yards, and Tony Hill's got with the fair catch. Double points for cheerleaders, 11-5 Pony Express. Dallas first and 10 on the own 42. On a designed run, Staubach rushes for 5. Pitch to Dorsett, only gets 1, but we have an illegal motion. So he gets a 5-yard penalty, so back to 2nd and 10. Drew Pearson gets his first catch, 13 yards. Still amazed at that. First and 10 on the Denver 45. Dorsett's not able to get anything. 2nd and 10, Staubach throws way deep, nowhere close to Golden Richards. But he goes deep again. It looks like a drop pass in the end zone by Butch Johnson. What it was. It would be today. Yes. 45-yard touchdown pass. Touchdown's good. There's no replay. There's no discussion. This is
okay. Let's pause for a second. Yeah. I think we need to have a. Ron gets his 10. I get my 10 seconds. And we do. Right. That's it. We're not going to adjudicate it. Only thing I want to make about this play, because I've talked to people over the years, it's kind of as simple as this. The rule at the time was you have the ball in your hands, you cross the goal line, that's it. It's not today's rule. It's not about maintaining possession. It's not making a football move. So I think this is a classic example, and it's fun, right? If the rules were in place today, now that would not be a catch. I get all that. But people like to argue whether this was a touchdown. By the rule at the time, when he hit the ground and the ball can't even come up, we had to grab it. That by the rule at the time, and that is irrelevant. That ball is in his hands when he crosses the goal. And I would say the same thing if it was reversed. If it happened to be the Broncos with a play like this, I would say the same thing. But it is a pivotal move, given that, we say how really close and competitive the game still is. And yeah, you could tell the play before what Staubach and the Cowboys were trying to do with Gordon Richards, and they came right back to it here. That's my 10, 15 seconds. Ron, the floor is yours.
I have two points. Number one, Des Bryant, if you're out there, don't look at this play or you're going to be very, very, very upset.
No Cowboy fans
for the rest of your life. Number two, it's a legitimate catch. I kid you on that, because obviously the rules today, but the rules back then were that's a catch, and there's no instant replay, and the officials have to make the call. And when I saw Butch Johnson, I think I told you guys at when they were closing out our old Mile High Stadium, they had a flag football game with alumni and other players, and Butch was there, and I said under my breath, "Oh, it was a great catch in the Super Bowl," but I can't admit that to you. I just have to act like I'm happy because you were a Bronco, but that was an incredible catch and it broke the game open.
And the other thing, one of these, sorry, go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
Just one other thing too, and you guys probably know this, but he broke his finger on that play. So I mean, that was a pretty good catch, and that's why the ball came loose.
And he's not the first player in the Cowboys to break his finger in this half. We'll get to that later.
Tony?
No, we'll get to that later. We'll save that one for later. Okay. Yeah. And what's interesting about this, given Kurt's earlier comment, where's Drew Pearson been all game? He was their number one receiver. Golden Richards was sort of aging out, and Butch Johnson. So they rotated those two guys in quite frequently as their number two.
Pearson been in any game.
Lewis, right?
This play here, happened to be Butch Johnson having that opportunity. But and there are two great catches in this game. Neither one of them were made by Drew Pearson. And it's no fault of his own. It's just he did not have a great game, and the opportunities didn't go his way.
Can't catch.
He was the number one receiver, but it doesn't come away that way.
Why did Drew Pearson not have a lot of catches in this game or much impact in this game? No. There was an orange number 20 blanketing him the whole game. Okay. And just because Lewis Wright wasn't an interception magnet, this guy was the original cover cornerback. And that's a case for why he should be in the Hall of Fame. And when they did throw, I mean, you saw what happened. Now, it would have been nice if Golden Richards had gone to the locker room and had a hot dog at about this point. But I regress because I know what's about to happen.
Well, here's something good, though, because Rick Upchurch, you wouldn't like him when you get him angry. Herrera kicks off, and Upchurch is electric on this return. He's dipping, diving, he's avoiding tackles, and he sets a then Super Bowl record with the 67-yard return. Can you get this back? The crowd's really into this, too. I think the Broncos fans who were there, it's like, okay, let's get something.
Yeah, I think if you're a Broncos fan at this point, you're like, we've got to match. We got to start matching the Cowboys for points. We got to keep up this. We've got to. This is an opportunity for us to get back in the game in a serious way. And maybe our last chance. We really need to get some points here. We need to have something because it's going to get harder and harder running out of time, and we know our offense isn't capable of putting on a lot of quick points. So at this point, if you're a Broncos fan, we need to do something here.
And
go
ahead.
Yep. The one really perplexing thing to me, and again, I don't know all the circumstances, like going back, 50 odd years, right? Or almost 50 years. But just ask you, it's almost a rhetorical question. Who were the most dynamic offensive players in that game for the Broncos? I know there's a little bit of crickets there in terms, because the ball couldn't get to Haven Moses. So the Cowboys did a good job, or Morton had shoulder, or it just wasn't getting it done there. The guy who looked like it was showing flashes and could be a game breaker was Mr. Upchurch. And to the point of what the Cowboys did with those gadget plays, or even that cutesy stuff early in the first quarter, and they're back near their goal line, they took risks like that with like Dorsett and others that could make splash plays and keep the defense honest. And it just seems like there wasn't a lot of creativity to integrate Upchurch and his skill set to do the same to the Cowboys defense. But I could be wrong. There might be other circumstances, but that's the one observation looking at this again, 45 years later, right?
Well, so Denver is 1st and 10 on the Dallas 26. Morton rolls out, and it's almost picked by Too Tall. And we get a sideline report from Paul Hornung, who says that they're taking Butch Johnson for an X-ray on his right arm. So I guess it's a broken finger. And I knew they switched quarterbacks, but I thought I'd see, every time we've seen a switch quarterbacks, you see somebody throwing. Now, maybe he very well was, but we just didn't see it. They weren't talking about it. And boom, Norris Weiss is in. I was not familiar with this gentleman at all.
Yes.
So second-year player out of Ole Miss. Overall, his career, only 7 starts, 57 games. But you got to do something. Whatever's wrong with Morton, it's not going to get fixed today. Maybe he's in his own head. Maybe he wanted to win so bad, and even though he was a veteran, you're still a young man in your 30s, and sometimes you try too hard. Sometimes it's just not your day.
So the other advantage the Broncos have, and I didn't realize this, and it was picked up by the commentators, is the switch to quarterback also moves him to a quarterback who could run the option, would be mobile. And I think, getting back to your point, Kirk, whatever the offensive game plan and strategy and play calling was for the Broncos in this game, and the personnel and the matchups against the Cowboys defense, it was not working. So here's a chance to flip the script a little bit. Maybe something the Cowboys weren't as well prepared to defend, and to move in a different direction, because I wouldn't. We're kind of at desperation, like we really need to make something happen here. And we know this, right? We watch football all the time, and sometimes a quarterback change isn't because the guy is hurt. Sometimes it's just a strategy where, for whatever reason, it's not working, and we can do something different the defense isn't prepared for. And with Norris, we've got a shift that is fundamentally different quarterback play. That and what do they have to lose, right?
I think
roll in on this.
I think now that I'm thinking about it, also it's not a pregame story you're thinking of. Like when we watched, what was it? I believe Super Bowl III. So you have Unitas coming back, who's ready to play. Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, Earl Morrall?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so like we could have played a game, count the shots of Unitas before we even got into the game, of the camera shots of him. Would have been more than might have tied actually the Pony Express ones here. I don't know. But that was a big story. Now, when you're going into this, and obviously the team, production, broadcasters, all right, so if he gets in trouble, we're going to have to talk about Norris Weiss. You're not thinking of that as a possibility. This is Morton's revenge, not Morton's collapse. Yeah. Like, you're not even thinking of that. So that might be why, if he was practicing on the sidelines, they're not showing it because they're thinking it's not happening.
Yeah, but you're talking about someone who's a mobile quarterback and who runs the option.
Sure, but I'm saying that's why they're not. When it happened, the commentators didn't build up to it.
Oh, exactly. I mean,
that's horrible.
I wish they'd been a little more creative too. Like, if maybe, let's see, the Broncos had thought of, let's do a little razzle dazzle. Maybe have like a fullback throw an option pass to one of the wide receivers. Oh, well, never mind. It didn't happen.
But at least, they didn't win.
I don't mean to be a spoiler. Sorry, Paul.
Paul and I watched where they waited too long. Like, even the one with Unitas. You're waiting too long.
Yeah.
But here they're not.
Well, you want to go with what, you want to go with what brung you, that old saying.
They could have. I don't think they could have held on longer because of Morton's year. And they didn't. So, I mean, this is still third quarter, still like middle of the third quarter. I don't think they jumped it too soon or too late. I think it was the right time. It's not his day. So anyway, first play, he hands off to Lytle, who gets 4. And on the 3rd and 6, a shovel pass to Jim Jensen. It's good for 5. So Jensen, I think you're talking about, he was the one you're mentioning, the chip on his shoulder because he was drafted by Dallas the year before. You asked that trivia question, and I had my damn note, and I couldn't remember. Like, oh well. So it's 4th and 1 on the Dallas 17, and Denver's smart here. You're keeping the ball. A field goal doesn't mean anything right now. An option to Jensen works. He rushes for 16. 1st and goal on the 1. Next play, Lyle punches it in. Touchdown. Extra point, good. Dog's not here, so I'll have to do it myself. Touchdown. And
goal.
And a Pony Express cheerleader walks through. 12-5.
Is that Robin Williams' hairy legs? Oh, I'm sorry. No.
That's my hairy legs. I got to watch that Mork and Mindy episode.
Nanu.
Oh, wait, no, that's Star Trek. I should know this because I'm named after damn Star Trek. I'm actually named after that. I don't know if you guys knew that. I'm named after Captain Kirk.
I'll file that away and use it the next time when you least expect it in a universe far away.
There's no joke about my name I haven't heard. All good. So way closer than it should be. And we've got another montage of the cheerleaders, of Denver cheerleaders. I'm calling it production bias. It has to be okay. The newsroom has called it. Denver's won. The Pony Express has won this. I'm not talking about cheerleaders for the rest of the.
Oh, I want to know if we won something. Don't we get a trophy?
Well, they stopped looking at the cheerleaders as much. I did actually keep counting, but you did win. Okay. There's far more of the Pony Express. If you're just listening,
there's a recent news story. Cheerleader was there for first Broncos Super Bowl.
That's the one I watched. That was the news thing I watched. Yes. Who says I don't do my homework? For those who are just listening, Paul's he's got a backdrop. Me, it's my kitchen. I'm not as creative. And Ron's got a great backdrop of all his work for Randy Gradishar. Paul rotates his. And now we've got one of the members of the Pony Express. So I thought that was very good. Denver kicks off, but we have an unnecessary roughness penalty against Dallas. So Dallas 1st and 10 on their own 14. Momentum. It's a fickle woman. Newhouse rushes for 1. Staubach throws to Dupree. We got a nice gain of 18. 1st and 10 on the 33. Newhouse rushes again for 6 and again for 3. 3rd and 1. Completion to Butch Johnson. 8 yards. And they really snuck it through because it looked like it was going to be a running play. So, again, just great execution by the Cowboys. So we're at midfield. Golden Richards is the next target. He gets 9 yards. Newhouse rushes for 4. a failed fake on Dorsett, so it's a 4-yard it's a negative 4-yard, and we've ended the quarter, and Dorsett's carried off. He's limping a bit. So start of the fourth, Dallas is on a great drive, and this is the gut punch that Denver's got to stop them. And we've seen them stop them before in short yardage, or like short field. They've got to do something here. 2nd and 14, Staubach completes to Preston Pearson for 5. And on 3rd and 9, Staubach is sacked by Tom Jackson and fumbles. Reuben Carter recovers. And I wrote down, we have now more, we have a sideline report from Buonaconti. I wrote down that he said, blah, 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 Weiss can scramble, blah, blah, blah. It probably wasn't exactly what he said, but it might as well have been.
So this is the Broncos' 5th sack on Staubach, and the Cowboys would have 4 sacks. I mentioned that earlier, and a second fumble for Dallas. And you mentioned Dorsett out, and he would not play the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm. So now the breaks are turning your favor. What can we do here? So you get that stop that you need. You get the crowd's back into it. Momentum's back into it. If you are a neutral fan, which a lot of people who go to the Super Bowl are, you're probably cheering for Denver. You always want to see this team that never was won before, usually. And it's a more interesting story. You're hearing all about the Bronco mania in Denver and Dallas. Around this time, they labeled themselves America's team. It's a bit entitled. There's a lot of people love the Cowboys and a lot of people love hating them. So Denver's got 1st and 10 on their own 45. Lytle's tackled by an 8-yard loss, but he used the face mask, was caught, and this was great. Waters and going like this. Please, please, please don't give me a penalty. I've never seen anyone try that before. If
someone's head goes.
Yeah, if I pray hard enough, the ref, well, maybe he's a Christian too. I don't know. This was I don't know how the commentators weren't laughing at this. This was great. Oh my God. So Denver's got 1st and 10 on their own 42. Weiss completes to Upchurch for 9 yards, but he's hurt after the play, but we would see Upchurch again. While he's sprawled out, and this is another thing that blew my mind. Upchurch is just lying on the ground and the chain gang's coming out while he's just lying there. You don't even know what, at this point, we don't know how serious it is. Like,
step over the body, right?
Yeah, it's.
Oh my God. They weren't even trying to pick him up. That was so cold. As we know, like Upchurch was going to be okay, but you don't know that at the time. And they certainly don't know that. They're not within earshot. Also, you know, as Paul said, it's a physical game. Staubach's going to the locker room, and they're showing a shot of his hand. It looks all mangled, or he's just doing a funny thing. Maybe it's a
well. I don't know the whole history on that. Yeah, he injured his finger, but I know whether it was that hit or combination hits. But he retired, and he still this day his one finger points more east-west than it does north-south. I don't recall, to be honest with you, whether it was a function of that game or repeatedly, because often, as we know, quarterbacks, that's an issue they often face, right? Their finger, they hit a helmet and they mess up their fingers. But to this day, he has this, I met him a couple times, he still has this sort of weird pinky that points, and maybe that was, you know, part of it or but it's just interesting. Yeah. And we'll talk more about how that plays out in the game here in a minute. But yeah, the big concern, because the 2 best offensive players of the Dallas Cowboys are on the sidelines.
And Denver's got to change momentum. You're getting a quarterback who just got a touchdown. This is winnable. So we will think. But I mean, right now, I mean,
there's still time left.
Yeah.
You're within 10.
You're within 10. It's early in the 4th quarter. And like Paul said, your 2 biggest offensive weapons are not there.
Yeah. Hey, quick question, Paul. Who was the offensive coordinator? Who was calling the plays for the Cowboys?
Wasn't Landry?
So, I think that was Tom Landry's preview, although Dan Reeves was, by I think, title the offensive coordinator, but I don't believe he called the plays.
That's what I thought.
Now,
okay.
I have to think this through a little bit because at some point through Roger Staubach's career, because Kurt and I covered this in the earlier Super Bowls with Roger Staubach. That was an issue between Landry and Staubach for many, many years. And we may be moving closer. And what happened early in Staubach's career, if he didn't like the play, he would just change it on his own. I think in the first Super Bowl we watched, at Super Bowl VI, they only audible twice in that game. But he would change things up. So I don't know at this point whether he has the confidence of Landry to call. I don't think so. I think Landry is still the guy, but he's getting a lot of input, obviously, from Reeves and from Staubach. I believe that's the case.
They mentioned.
No, fair enough.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, everyone thinks of Landry as this very close to the vest, buttoned up, conservative kind of approach to football. And this Cowboys offense, I guess out of necessity coming out of Super Bowl X, said, okay, we need some juice, and we need to let it loose. We just can't do the same old. And you see some of the plays that they made to this point, and I have a feeling there might be one more.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Ron. I think overall people viewed him as a conservative play caller, and throughout much of his career, Landry, that is. But there were times even before this game, right, that he wasn't afraid to be innovative, the shotgun, reverses, things of that nature. I remember some of that the option play back, with Dan Reeves in one of the early playoff championship games against the Packers. So he had all those there, and I think maybe the approach that he came into this, like, people think I'm conservative, and maybe most of my play calling is conservative, but they better watch out because I have a tendency to throw in the gadget plays. And I think your call was right on earlier in saying, looking at that Orange Crush defense coming into this game, I haven't heard this, but I think both of us would probably agree that, yeah, the Cowboys needed to do something a little creative and catch them off guard. And we saw that multiple times in this game. I think that was strategic.
Easily. Yeah. You have to call off the dog somehow. And because a lot of them haven't been in this at this stage, so see what their mettle is on this.
Yeah.
Okay. So second down, and on second, Armstrong gets 3 yards, which is enough for first down on the Dallas 46. Weiss throws for Dublin. He catches that out of bounds though, so 2nd and 10. Goes deep for Upchurch in the end zone, but he was double covered and it was deflected. 3rd and 10. Weiss is hit as he's released. Incomplete to Dublin midfield, and unfortunately they're forced to punt. Dills actually he hasn't had a great game, but he had a good punt here, or just worked out well. Allowed Denver to get it at the 2, but it bounced in, unfortunately. So the coverage been maybe a little bit more. That might have changed, but it's touchback. Dallas 1st and 10 on their own 20. As we saw, we got now our second backup. Wait, is this the first time we've had 2 backups come into a Super Bowl that we've covered? I don't know.
Could be. I mean, it's not. Yeah. And obviously, going into this game, right, one of the big angles that was played up was the history between. I don't mean history in a bad way, right? But the fact that Morton was the Cowboys quarterback, took him to Super Bowl V, did not win that game. It was not till midway through the next season in 1971 where Staubach took over the quarterback and led them to their Super Bowl VI, and he was the MVP of that game. That's when Staubach, even though he was injured the year after that shift had occurred. And then a few years later, actually, Morton signed with an advanced futures contract with the World Football League. And the combination of that plus the fact that Staubach was the established leader is when that trade happened. I'm just pointing out that both those guys are no longer in the game at this juncture for very different reasons. But yeah.
Well, Danny White's in at quarterback. First pass is complete to Preston Pearson for 5. 2nd and 5, Newhouse again is lucky to have gotten 2 yards out of that. And in that great 70s Rocky moment out of the locker room, it's Staubach comes out of the locker room and they get him from the camera work from behind. Da, 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 da.
I'm watching that and going like, was a guy resurrected? What's going on here? Because they made it seem like that. They really liked it. And the guy just, I mean, as we're going to see, he broke his finger. I mean, he which was, it's significant, but And I think they mentioned a couple of times here, right, that Danny White is actually getting some chance, and maybe he's kind of showcasing perhaps an opportunity to be a quarterback.
Play somewhere else, they said.
Yeah, which would happen in Dallas earlier than he thought, but we're a few more years away from that. And also, I think Ron mentioned about Ron Newhouse earlier. We are seeing him now because Tony Dorsett is out for the game, and so that's another thing. That's why we're seeing more a great running back who at this point had shifted more of a fullback role when Dorsett arrived, but in this case he reverted back to the role he had earlier in his career where the Cowboys were doing a rotation platoon of running backs. And so he has some skill sets. He doesn't have Dorsett's moves and speed, but he has a lot of other attributes that make him a good to average running back. And we see him because Dorsett's not back in this game. He would not return.
Also excellent blocker.
Yes.
And with the rush that the Broncos were sending, that was kind of a big deal.
Well, and he has another apparent skill we're going to see here in a minute.
I was just going to say, we're exactly going to see that. Because shotgun hasn't worked here for Staubach, but this is not your typical shotgun. It's 3rd and 3, and it's actually designed draw. And it works. Yeah. White rushes for 13 yards. Dallas 1st and 10 on their own 40. A play action pass is deflected by Gradishar. And
gutting it out.
There you go. 2nd and 10, we got a draw to Newhouse. It's only for 1 yard. Danny White calls timeout. I thought that was interesting. Oh, okay. It's maybe to get Staubach back in the game, and it is. So we got Staubach back at QB. First play, he throws to Pearson, but it's well over his head in the sideline, and they're going to have to punt.
Louis Wright. Louis Wright.
Yep, there you go. White goes to Upchurch. Upchurch can't replicate the same magic he did last time. Doesn't get much. And it's 1st and 10 on their own 24, but this still is doable. 8 minutes and 50 seconds left. We see some of Weiss's mobility. He's almost sacked, but he manages to throw to Odoms. It's only for a 1 yard loss, but he still escaped something much worse. 2nd and 11, Weiss slips out of a tackle again. Gain 7. 3rd and 4, deep shotgun. Weiss is sacked, and then the fumble's caused by Harvey Martin, and Aaron Kyle gets the fumble recovery. Now it doesn't feel doable anymore.
8 is enough.
There you go.
As far as the turnovers.
Yes. I never thought that Dick Van Patten was fooling anyone with that comb over, but anywho.
But by the way, too, that's a record for turnovers in a Super Bowl at that point. I think it's been superseded since then.
Yes.
Okay. Who has that now?
I can't remember. I should have looked that up, but yeah.
Well,
there was a really
Staubach pitches to Newhouse, and then Newhouse gets a touchdown pass. He throws to Golden Richards. Touchdown. PAT good, because Herrera can still do those. And we got 27-10 Dallas.
So, Kurt, I'm a 12-year-old watching my first Super Bowl. Yep. This play, seeing a play like this, I hadn't seen a lot of. I mean, I think at that point my understanding of football was pretty basic. I hadn't watched a lot, so I was fascinated by this option pass, and it hooked me into football and the Cowboys. I met Golden Richards a number of years ago, and actually had him autograph a few pictures of this catch because I remember this being a kid. And so when I think of this game, again, as a 12-year-old, really cementing myself as a lifetime Cowboys and football fan, this play kind of symbolizes that for me. And if I can just have a couple more minutes on this real quick. Golden Richards, so he would play a few more years with the Cowboys, but Tony Hill, I think you mentioned earlier in the game, he would eventually push both Richards and Butch Johnson out of that role, and him and Drew Pearson would be the two receivers starting in the next year, and for the late 70s into the early 80s, the two of them were number 1 and number 2 receivers. Richards would go on. I think he was either let go or traded to Bears for about a year, and then he left football and kind of disappeared from football in a lot of ways. He struggled for years and years in his life. He ran into some legal issues around fraud and embezzlement and a lot of it was because he had a terrible drug habit, some of which he attributes to his playing career and the use of drugs and painkillers, but he takes full responsibility for that. So he had a really rough time in his life after football, which we know many players struggle with, and in this era as well, right? This is something that we're not unfamiliar with. We talked about Lyle Alzado, it probably different, but I mean, the transition out of football and the injuries and the health and dependence on drugs and all of these kind of swirled around. And he spent 20 years estranged from many of his family, including his own kid, because of issues he had. But he turned his life around in the late 90s and early 2000s. When I had met him in 2006 at a sports collectible show, by that point he had kind of he had some stories written about him. People tried to track him down in the 90s and early 2000s, and he gave some interviews, and he felt that he sort of shied away from the press, and he was sort of very angry and frustrated about how he was perceived in the media. And he kind of walked at that point even further into kind of being recluse and away from the game. But since then, he's in the sort of mid 2000s. He put his life back together, reunited with his family, kind of reestablished himself. I think some of his teammates also helped kind of bring him back to a place in his life that was better for him. So this catch was sort of the peak of his career, and his NFL career. And he had some key catches and kick returns earlier in his career. But he's a guy, and again, I just point this out because we know there's players like this or leave the game, especially in this era, who really struggle with a lot of health and some other issues. And not all of them are rich and famous and healthy and go on. Many of them are. Roger Staubach, became very wealthy as a commercial real estate investment when he started as a player, and then throughout his career. But a lot of guys, right, this era, it was a rough transition, and not a time in which we had mental health, drug abuse support.
Nobody knew what mental health was.
Health care, even the health care they got when as a player, a lot of use of painkillers, a lot of advanced medical treatment for injuries was not what it is today. So when we think and we talk and we see players from the 70s and before, I think those of us who watch the game always need to remember and appreciate what they were put through, and that they weren't making a lot of money. They gave it for the love of the game. And a lot of them struggled and still to this day, whether they're superstars or not. Something that I think all of us fans, when we get a chance to meet or talk to players like Golden Richard, understand our fandom was outside the bubble and the window of what a lot of these guys went through. So I just thought my connections to this play and the individual was kind of I just want to kind of highlight that for folks. This seems to be the time, because this is his Super Bowl moment is right here.
Right. And
thank you for sharing.
And it's good to sort of like mention like everything that you just said. I was thinking too, like when you said that you met him at a sports memorabilia thing much after, that avenue didn't exist. Or if it did, it wasn't lucrative really in any capacity. There were no conventions or any of these things. Yeah. I don't believe. I could be mistaken.
No, I mean, that kind of stuff really started to explode in the early to mid 1990s, and then since then. And it has provided a lot of opportunities for retired players back this far, even players back who played in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, to be able to supplement their income, their pensions coming out of that they're better now, but the pensions that these guys had when they retired in the 70s, 80s was not very good. So it allowed a lot of superstars who didn't make money playing, guys like Dick Butkus and others, to be able to do that. But it also meant for any player who made the Hall of Fame, or any player who was a fan favorite, or any player who made a big catch in a Super Bowl, or et cetera. Those kind of guys who played in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and the 80s were able to supplement their income and travel. I mean, Bob Lilly, to this day, I've met him a number of times. He's on the circuit signing autographs, less so now because of his health, but for many, many years, he was out there, and they're not charging $100 or $200 like players do today. I mean, they're charging $25, $30, $40, $50. And, they're doing some of these shows, and many of these guys still are. So it is an income opportunity. Like you said, they need to have jobs. They need to have careers after they played. Mm-hmm. The money that players started to make, I think we talked about this earlier, we're not quite there yet in the mid-70s. I might be wrong, but I think Roger Staubach was maybe one of the highest players in the league at the time. And my recollection is right, he made around $150,000 a year, which then compared to the average working salary was pretty darn good. But a guy like Roger Staubach today, what, $50 million a year? I mean, yeah. So a lot of these guys, and it just goes to show, right? We talked about it earlier. They had to work in the off season, and they had to have post careers, and many of that didn't work out for some of them. And the whole sports memorabilia and autograph industry as exploded. It existed in the 80s, but in the 90s and 2000s provided a great opportunity for many of these guys to supplement income and pensions that were very, very small.
Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier when we saw Buonaconti and Horning, one of the players here would go on to become one of the more known analysts ever, and Tom Jackson. So when he got that gig next to Chris Berman, what year was that? Would that have been? Mid-80 something, which he held forever. It felt like.
Yeah, I know he did it for almost. I think they said almost 29 years. Yeah. So I think upon his retirement, he got a gig at ESPN. And keep in mind, ESPN didn't even exist at the time of this game, 1979. And that's when cable was kind of like sporadic, and you'd get like the community cable stuff. It didn't really hit till the mid-80s.
Yeah, so he joined ESPN Studios, Jackson did, in 1987, was teamed with Chris Berman on what was then the network's signature NFL shows, including NFL Countdown and NFL Primetime, which to this day I still miss, actually. And yeah, he went on to win 7 Sport Emmys for Outstanding Studio Show. And he did that through 2016. Then he was off for a few years and then started back up in 2019. So, yeah, he's a perfect example of what we're talking about, a guy who's able to move on from playing, stay in professional football in other capacity, and have a whole second career based on that was much more successful and lucrative than his playing career. And he's a perfect example of one of those guys.
But there were so few spots. So I don't know whether they came to him or he won it compared to a bunch of other people. I don't know the story behind it. But this is not to take a shot at Tom Jackson. I loved his work. But you got to figure that there's probably 40 other people vying for that position, maybe more, who could have done as good or even comparable. I mean, now, I'll take a shot at my beloved quarterback, Drew Brees. I knew that him as an analyst was not going to work. He's not known for that type of personality.
Well,
sometimes you're wrong.
I'm just looking at his background a little more. So he actually prior to 1987, he actually included co-host positions for the Broncos Beat, a weekly show in Denver, and a post-game show locally, a daily syndicated sports commentary roadshow. So he was a guy who was a local player who started in local media and kind of worked his way up, and obviously at some point a producer at a level of ESPN. In 1987, when ESPN was in their really early years, obviously saw him and thought, hey, this is a guy, we'd like to raise to a level and put him on a show like Chris Berman, and let them run with it and let him pull out.
Paul, it was 87, not 97, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. He started with ESPN in 1987.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing for all these guys. And it needed to be said what you said about Golden Richards in relation to retired players and their personal circumstances and how much they made back in the day. It's just a completely different world. They have jobs in the offseason. Randy Gradishar still works. He's been part of a major car dealership in the Denver, Colorado Springs metro area. That's where he took the call from the Hall of Fame on Tuesday, the 22nd of August from Jim Porter.
Wacky Randy.
Not that. But I mean, I'm just saying it didn't set them up for life the way it does now if they manage their money right.
And I think it's an important thing. Kurt and I think, have highlighted a couple of times. So fans today understand that situation was much different and don't work with the assumption when they see retired players, whether it's on the sports collectible circuit or whether they're in the media or whatever they're doing in their communities and whatever jobs. People need to realize, it was fun. It wasn't till the early to mid 80s that the salaries really started to take off. So I think it's important for us to be able to tell folks when we're looking at this history of these games that one major difference was these guys, for the most part, did not get extremely wealthy from playing football in the pre-1980s eras.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was all about the business connections and what you could do for after your career in terms of the connections you made with the platform that you had.
But the game's not over, Kurt. Where are we?
Oh, that's right. Herrera kicks off. Herrera did not do probably that well in the sports memorabilia circuit. Not a great kickoff. Return to the 47, first and 10 for Dallas, or on the Dallas 47, sorry. Weiss incomplete to Odoms. Armstrong rushes for 3 on a draw, and Lytle gains 5. So we don't have a first down, so it's 4th and 2. Well, they're going to go for it. Weiss has to go for it, and he does. It's a designed run that gains 10. Now, to be fair, as this is a decent drive for Denver, but we can be blunt. Dallas is playing more of a prevent, and they're just letting him, not letting him, but it's a different type of coverage, obviously. Weiss completes to Doblin for 9, and then Weiss rushes for another 9 on a nice scramble. First and 10 on the Dallas 11. Incomplete as he overshoots Moses into the end zone, and then he's sacked by D.D. Lewis. So 3rd and 15 on the 16. Lytle is tackled for a 3-yard loss, and then Lytle's just frustrated. And then that's a bullshit penalty I wrote down for spiking the ball. Like,
yeah, come on.
Yeah, exactly, right. But that's the rule. I mean, he's get a penalty for spiking the ball, but Upchurch didn't get anything for flipping out. But whatever, different time. And they're very specific on that. That's something you just can't do, I suppose, unless you're in the end zone. Or when did they say you could do that? I don't know. What do we got there?
Nice.
There we go. Another prop. I love it.
Yeah,
no, it says Broncos World Champions. And this is one of the original pennants that were out. I mean, that's how excited Denver was. Sorry to interrupt, but I just...
No, that's great.
That is awesome. My mom threw out all my cool stuff. Anyway,
when we do our next show, I'll get some props.
I won't have any because I can't even figure out how to do a backdrop. What do we got there?
Oh, the newspaper heading on. Yeah, look at that
on the mug.
Yep, great stuff.
Sorry, because of my background, it's not going to show.
All I have is a mini dash-in. Oh well. 4th and 23, goes deep to Upchurch at the 3, but he can't hang on to it. Brookshire thinks that he was thinking of that he's thinking of the touchdown as he turned his head, like looking at the end zone. I'm not sure even if he caught it, that would have been enough anyway, because they had to get to the 1. But it's a turnover on downs. Dallas now it's pretty much over. Dallas is 1st and 10 on their own 25, and I'm just going to whip through this because there's really no much more reason to do that. Incomplete to Drew Pearson. I wrote down, why is he throwing? You'd think you just want to run up the clock, but sometimes even the great ones like Landry get it wrong. Deflected by Jackson, who we talked about a lot on that. We see a shot at Landry, and for whatever reason, I'm just picturing this. I know they didn't start doing the Gatorade bath until much later, but you think they would have ever done that to Tom Landry?
Oh,
I just
did they want to be?
Why I thought of that?
I have a rhetorical question and answer to that. If you did that to Tom Landry and you weren't like Roger Staubach or Randy White, would you like to be playing in the NFL the next season?
There you go. Landry might have been the smallest man there, but I don't think that would have gone well. What? Oh, look at that. I've got to get someone's got to teach me how to do backgrounds.
Yes.
Wait. Here you go. Is that you?
That's me.
With?
Randy White.
Oh, very, very cool.
I've got
here's this book, okay? It's from, now the interesting part is, Then Morton Said to Elway is the name of the book. Now, I don't know if you can see down low. If you can see any detail that's probably on the book, you probably can't. But do you know who the author is, Kirk?
I can't see it. No.
Yeah.
Adrian Dater,
Oh, there you go.
our hockey aficionado, expert guru, who joined us for the Red Wings Avalanche bloodbath rivalry.
Yes. Love that. Pearson rushes. Oh, there we go. Man, every time I meet a celebrity, I just piss them off. Wait till I tell you about what I did with the bare naked ladies. Anyway, I did something really stupid there too. Pearson rushes for 5. 3rd and 5, shovel past Preston, gets the first down, but it's called back due to a legal man downfield. 3rd and 5, 3rd and 15, sorry. Scott Laidlaw rushes for his only carry of the game. It's 1 yard. He only had 15 all year. It's a 2-minute warning. So, of course, something, and just, because it can't get worse, this is another punch in the gut for Denver. Dallas punts, and there's a running into the kicker penalty. Legit penalty. So they're just pretty much winding everything down. The commentators are barely paying attention, as we've seen before. You're trying to get more shots of everybody. Get great ones of Hollywood Henderson, just and again, that's where the announcers were phenomenal here. It's like, oh, Orange Crush, and they're doing this grip, but no, don't blame the defense on this one.
Yep.
The defense was phenomenal. They announced that there's, as Newhouse is rushing for 3, they announced that there's co-winners, Randy White and Harvey Martin. Summerall sort of sugarcoats there. He seems surprised by it. I guess I was too. And says bluntly, I don't know that I could pick an MVP.
Yeah, so there's the problem that and I think, again, I hate to repeat myself, but I think you and I pointed this out in another Super Bowl game. You don't have a quarterback with a huge game, right? Stallback, real quick here, I got the stats in front of me for the game.
Well, yeah, last game, I wanted to give it to the O-line.
Yeah, I mean, Stallback, 17-25, 183, 1 touchdown. There's no running back. Dorsett, 15 carries, 66 yards, 1 TD, but he didn't play the last quarter there. And so there's that. And the offensive line, Cowboys gave up five sacks. Mm-hmm. And so then you start looking at, obviously, the 8 turnovers by the Broncos. So you start saying, okay, who had a bunch of those? And it turns out, there's a bunch of guys who ended up with those turnovers. The sacks were kind of, Cowboys had 4. But here's the thing, and I tried to find this, and I maybe should have done a little deep digging. I would like to see the stat for quarterback pressures, because I think in the folks who were looking at, and we have a tie. The first tie, a shared co-MVP, which means voters who were voting on that award were obviously different views of things. But you got 2 guys who were constantly, relentlessly pressuring Morton. And if you watch the film, I guess maybe I could go back and count them all up. I didn't. But that was obviously where it came down to. And you end up with a circumstance like this where you have 2 defensive linemen. Neither one of them had a lot of interceptions or a lot of sacks. And they're sharing the award, which tells you, the voters couldn't come to a decision. And you end up with this sort of like unique, kind of surprising outcome. Yep.
Well, we've only got 3 more plays. Pearson rushes for 5, Newhouse for 3, and of course they get a first down, just like another gut punch. Staubach kneels, and the game. What do we got there?
Oh, now we're really dropping pictures and names in. Okay. Who's behind you there?
Rest in peace. But if you want to talk about people looking like they might be angry or not happy with the situation, which wasn't the case.
Yeah, but
the late great Jim Brown.
So the stats here: first down, Cowboys 17, Denver 11. Sacked, as I mentioned before, Cowboys were sacked 5 times, to Denver 4. Passing yards, net passing yards for the Broncos 35 yards, total 156. The difference here, of course, is the turnovers. The Cowboys turned over the ball twice. The Denver Broncos mentioned had 8. The Cowboys actually set a record at the time for most penalties in a Super Bowl, 12. So you have the missed field goals. You got the penalties, and the Broncos defense playing hard and keeping this a much closer game than most folks would think. And for the Dallas Cowboys, their second Super Bowl out of 4. They're now establishing themselves in the mid-70s, along with the Steelers, as potential team of the decade, and would set the stage for, I think, we're going to be our next Super Bowl, because we have to do Super Bowl 13, which to this day is still considered by many to be one of the top 10, if not top 5 Super Bowls of all time. And so that's kind of how the game works out. And, for Denver, they would get back to this game, of course, in the 80s and 90s and get success. But at this point, we have a 2-time world champion Super Bowl winner, and there's Landry being carried off the field.
And no Gatorade.
No Gatorade. No Gatorade. Yeah, I couldn't chime in because I was doing something else, but that ain't happening.
No, I suppose not. And then there's another shot. Who we got there?
You should know. I'm wearing the same shirt.
Yeah. Okay.
The great president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Jim Porter.
That's right.
Who's listening to fans, historians, and also selectors to try to improve the process.
Right.
With the board.
Pictures of me with people, but I keep pissing them off.
Yeah, that's not very good. That doesn't help. It matters.
I never even tried. I should, I suppose.
Overall, it had its moments as a Super Bowl. There's a few highlights there. I think kind of wrap up. It was a closer game, and then people give it. It was a hard-hitting game. I think the matchups were great. There's some great personalities. I think the defenses played obviously very well. You got a couple big plays in there, and as we said many times in this game, right early on, even early in the third quarter, the Broncos were hanging in, even though things weren't going their way, and with the interceptions and turnovers, and the Cowboys did not put this game away early, and a lot of that is to credit to the Orange Crush defense. Maybe not a great Super Bowl in many ways, but I think an iconic one for its time.
Yes.
And the first game indoors, the first game in East Coast prime time, and apparently the first game with cheerleaders.
A lot of cheerleaders.
Apparently.
The only time Paul and I ever mentioned cheerleaders was when we watched the Ice Bowl, our first thing. It's like, how are you out there?
Yeah. Other than that, we haven't noticed it till now.
Yeah, Vaseline on the arms,
It was.
And thanks, Ron, for joining us. It's been great.
Sure.
We really appreciate that. We always try to get some mixed folks in here. We had a lot of fun, and it's great that you were able to share your history and recollection of the game and the perspective from Broncos Nation over the decades and how
no.
props are great.
Broncos country. Broncos Nation is a no.
I know.
I'll show you one more little. You may have seen this in the beginning. Some really cool pictures on the cover of this book. Lyle Alzado. Also, too, and I just wanted to point this out at the end here, that defense with all those players, obviously Gradishar, and Alzado and Louis Wright and Tom Jackson, but also this man here who's talking to Randy. If we can see it, I'm sorry. But Joe Collier. The longtime defensive coordinator who came up with that game plan and put them in the right place to be successful and really was the beginning of that Orange Crush legacy. And he's 91 years old now, still around and is one of Randy's biggest supporters. But, with him and Red Miller and just everything, that was the beginning of something big for the Broncos in terms of getting that franchise to the next level, even though championships didn't happen for 20 more years. And then they got
Carter,
this.
We always point out when you do these, what do we see in terms of Hall of Famers? In this case, the Cowboys had 10 in this game, including 7 coaches. 3 coaches and 7 players. And Ron can refresh our memory on the lack of players from Super Bowl teams at this juncture. As we sit here today, we are very close to getting our first Bronco into the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. And here's a fun fact: of the first 37 Super Bowls, 74 teams, obviously the the seniors designation is a finalist, and the overall 50 selectors have to approve Randy Gradishar for 2024. But based on that, the Broncos will get their first Hall of Famer in Randy Gradishar.
There you go.
And they'll be the last team of 74 of the first 37 Super Bowls to have a Hall of Famer. And our friend Jack Silverstein said it goes from 1920 to 2002 for the champion or the runner-up as well. Like it blew me away.
It is.
But if Jack says it, he meticulously figured that out. So
it's mind-boggling to see. Yeah, think about that. It's crazy.
Yeah. And everyone I told that to.
It's gospel. If I say it, I was sober on this one, so this was already a win.
No, and everyone I told that to, jaw dropped, eyes popped out. Ira Kaufman at the Hall of Fame, Harvey Green, the former PR guy for the Dolphins, they were like, repeat that? Really? Are you sure? And Jarrett Bell was at Broncos training camp, besides local folks. And the Broncos probably heard me tell that 10 times to people, 100 times to people, and they finally ran with it and quote tweeted it on selection eve. So hopefully that made a difference. I didn't get attribution, but it was like, it's good that people know it, given the audience. Finally, Randy Gradishar, thank you.
And I think I want to close with this. Usually I plug a bunch of things. I'm not going to today just because we've talked a lot. And anyone who's stuck with us, thank you so much for that. But if you want to get your guy in, follow what Ron does. Ron is kind. He doesn't berate people. And I don't know how many times the three of us, we've ever watched somebody say, it's a joke that blah, 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 blah.
Oh, gosh.
That will never get you anywhere with anybody, ever. You kill them with kindness, facts, stats, and just being a good person.
And also, if anyone's looking and talking about Hall of Fame, listen, don't assume anything. Part of what I did, and had a very small part in this, but hopefully if I helped one or two selectors to say yes, then that made a difference, right? But listen to what people are saying. Our friend Clark Judge on the Bengals to the Hall podcast said, look, there's no Orange Crush in the Hall of Fame. And I would never say, we'll be Denver. No one likes us. Everyone's against us. That doesn't play. But Clark said that. And Clark's a selector who everyone listens to and respects. Mm-hmm. So I took that stat and compared the Orange Crush to the other 5 great defenses of the 70s, including, Paul, your doomsday defense, Steel Curtain, Purple People Eaters, No Name, Fearsome Foursome. I know I'm missing someone, but just that was my comparison to make it valid. And then we got that stat about the first 35 to 37 Super Bowls, and that just put an exclamation point on it. But you have to have a player like Randy, who was great, Hall of Fame level. You can't just have someone who's in your ring of fame, who you really adore, but is just not quite a Hall of Famer. So, just be kind, like you said, Kirk, and listen to people and be thoughtful about it. It's been a really big challenge, and I'm so happy for this man and his family can enjoy it, because he deserves it and they deserve it. And a lot more of these older seniors need to get in and have that experience as well. Then thanks so much for having me. This was quite the game, even though the result was like, oh my gosh.
I feel bad because when you come back, the next 2 won't be any better.
Oh yeah, but I actually can get you a guest for the San Francisco one, who's from one of my Irish friends, who's on one of the Irish NFL podcasts and networks, and that was when he started to love the Broncos, and that's a game he'll always remember, even though the score was by 45 points.
Well, Paul and I love guests.
He would be great. I'll hook you up.
It sounds good. Well, with that, gang, wherever you are, wherever you may be, stay safe, everybody.
All right, take care.
My high salute.
There you go.